All right, good evening. Calling the meeting to order at 7 p.m. First, we'll start with the board norms, which are to maintain our focus, communicate respectfully, be present, keep the board productive and effective, and respect the agenda. So no action on this next part here, but I did tuck in the reflection on West River Education District values, which we had produced in 2018 after many sessions. I forget, was that self-led or did we have I don't even remember.
Did Jen lead something for you guys at one point?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Did this come out of the retreat at town hall?
Yeah, it's upstairs.
Yeah, it was upstairs at town hall when way back.
I wasn't there, but I remember when you guys did that.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
So anyway, just as we're going through the process, I just wanted to we have our board norms and we say it every time, but wanted to kind of reflect on the values that we have as a board that were back in 2018. And who knows, maybe at some point we might reflect on those again and update as need be. But anyway, just putting them in there for the moment for everybody to take a look at. Do we have any changes to the agenda? All right, seeing none. Eli, you're up.
All right. So as far as what's going on, Leland and Gray, obviously it's coming to the end of the semester, going into the second semester. So a lot of students are getting their final exams and final projects in. So hopefully everyone does well at that. Basketball season obviously has started. We're into January now. It's almost February. It's been a little bit of a hard season for both the boys and girls. But the girls did pick up 2 wins in January and the boys picked up 1. So that was awesome. And then the girls are here tomorrow night versus Pulteney. And then the boys' next game is on Wednesday away at Springfield. And then winter sports has started. So we have on Wednesdays, we have kids going up to Stratton, go out on the slopes, skiing, snowboarding. And then some kids going bowling. We have a few kids going and cross-country skiing at Grafton Ponds, and then some other kids staying here doing some fun stuff. So other than that, it's January, Leland Gray.
All right. Thanks, Eli. Any questions for Eli? All right. Go run some laps.
Yes.
We tried to keep it as long as possible.
Yeah, you do now have Kate and Emily.
Oh, okay, great.
Here.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Public comment. Now is your opportunity. If you would like to have a public comment. I don't see anybody raising their hands. No, you're good. All right.
Nothing there either.
Okay. All right. So moving on to long-term planning discussion. So just want to kind of ground everybody, keep in mind that this is something that will remain on the agenda. Who knows how long? In perpetuity, who knows? But obviously the budget and other things have kind of taken precedence at the moment, but this is something that we will continue to look at until we reach a resolution on the project.
And I would just add that I think the conversations that happened at the Jamaica Information Night, there was a lot of questions around the Newbrook, driving to Newbrook as part of that initial proposal that led to the vote request. And so we do need to come back to that at some point and revisit. And I think certainly the consensus out in the community is that's still on the agenda at some point. So yeah, just thinking about reforming a committee, thinking about what the next steps are, and then maybe the longer term one as well. So yeah.
Second look at FY26 budgets. Who from the committee would like to pick that off, or somebody from? You want to give an overview first?
Thing and share screen, or how do you?
And I wasn't sure whether you were going to start with what this committee sort of narrowed it down to. That's what I thought we'd start with.
Okay. All right. So yeah. Well, yeah, I guess I don't have the ability to screen share this right this moment for people in Zoom land, but included in your packet is really a memo, I guess, from the budget committee submitted by me trying to capture sort of the flavor of what that group did. I will highlight this so people that are on Zoom can understand. We met twice, 12/18 and 1/8. Between the two meetings, Dana West, Drew Hazel, and Emily Long, Joe Winrick, Peter Broussard, and of course, the principals, Heidi and myself. We reviewed the charge, which we interpreted as finding savings in each of the two presented budgets, one with JVS, one without, to try to get at or below the spending threshold. That charge was complicated by the fact that in the interim between meetings, the long-term weighted ADM number from the state changed dramatically, and eventually creating targets of around $1,870,000 respectively for the two budget versions. So the original numbers, which were about 600 and 470K. So our work got more intense as those new numbers came out. The committee created the following list of items for consideration, which does include the use of fund balances. The committee discussed the board identifying a desired fund balance level to aid in future conversations of this nature. Other considerations included eliminating, that are not included on this list, by the way, included eliminating 3-year-olds from the pre-K program, reducing the capital investment that's in the budget of 150. And there were some members of the committee that wished to explore reopening the WCSU budget as a mechanism to find savings. But the list of items that you see here, I guess it makes sense really to kind of look at the second page because it includes all the ones on the first page and one additional one. Although the dollar amounts you'll see differ depending on what we were trying to capture. We were trying to target a higher number, but we had to have more savings. But you can see the items that we talked about was the board support for the BDCC, which was voted on at the last board meeting of $25,000. Using fund balance to remove the Journey Away coordinator salary and benefits from the local budget. And that would give a 2-year ramp, and that would end up using up the balance of that Journey Away fund balance. Reducing the request amount of the project-based learning funds at Leland Gray. So that's a $50,000, you can see, reduction in the request, which still allows for some growth. VEMSA programming. So in one, it has an elimination of 20, and the other one, it has a reduction of 10. The total cost is 20. There was some element of reducing after and summer school programming, which is in the budget for about $400,000. So there's some variations in how you might want to consider that, but perhaps in this first one you're cutting that in half, and then the other one taking 150 off, depending on, again, you get the same number. So there's some fund balance use of that after school program as well. And you see there's 95,000 in the fund balance. So one item we had here was using 75 of that 95. Use of the general fund balance, which has 1.3 million balance, using about 300,000 of that. We have some reduction in summer food expenses. This is the summer food program. And I have that number on the wrong line. The use of the food program fund balance of 100,000, 250K should be on that line, not the summer food expense line. We noted that the LNG safety position has already been reduced in these budgets. The two teachers from JVS to K-5 teachers have already been eliminated in both these budgets. And then additionally, in the second budget, the building operations and the admin assistant would also be reduced. So you can see with the Jamaica closed budget, there's still a gap of the things I just listed of about 175,000 and about 149,000 on the first one. The committee, I think, and we can query the individual members, I think we agreed that getting to the actual dollar amount would involve some broader board conversation. But these are some items that were talked about. And if I left anything out from folks who were there, feel free to jump in.
I was the board member that was discussing the SU component of the budget. Certainly a major concern for banker taxpayers. Is the tax rates that we're looking at, even with these numbers, you roll it back out. So I don't want to quote the wrong numbers, but we're over 20%, I think, if to make it school state open and maybe.
Yes. So we're actually at 22.67% if Jamaica stays open. They're at 20.41% if Jamaica building is closed. And if
That's pre-reduction.
correct, the current budgets as they stand without any reductions. And then meeting the per pupil threshold, which involves cutting just over $1 million, puts them at a 6.76% increase.
So for me, the challenge is that, you know, as Bob said, the change in our long-term weighted ADM, I wrote it down so I can get it right, happened after our board members went and voted on the budget. So when they were looking at those expenses, they had no idea that they were going to be saddling Jamaica with a 20% tax increase, or that we'd be looking at cutting $1 million in school programs. So I think it only makes sense with new information that has a significant financial impact that we look at those numbers as a way to find some savings. I asked the last board meeting for some information, and I know the taxpayers of Jamaica have some information about, you know, what was in that budget and what potential savings were. And I was a little bit upset, I'll say, as a board member to hear, our budget's been voted on, nothing we can do about it, and really these reductions all need to come out of our local. Well, that's not actually true. Like, that board can revisit, and I'm asking our board to reconsider. Obviously, I'm not on the SU board, so I have no ability to actually do that. But I think it's, when you're looking at cuts that are $1 million deep, this +% tax increase, I think it's irresponsible for us to not look at that. And I do have some concerns at looking at that budget that I think are really important, because it makes up a significant portion of our taxes. And I will say I spent some time going through our websites, both the WCSU and the our website, and it is almost impossible to find the budget. So if you're a member of the public and you're out there trying to find the budget documents, it took me over an hour to find the budget documents on. In fact, West River's budget documents are not on West River's website at all. You have to get through them through the SU website after sifting through documents on our website. So it's really difficult for the public, especially now that we're asking Jamaica tomorrow to go to the polls and vote on closing the school, and they can't find the financial information anywhere. It is really hard to locate. But I did dig through and I read the minutes of all the board meetings, and I looked through the financial documents, and the board meeting that where the budget was approved was on November 20th. So that was ahead of our discussion about the budget. It was ahead of this change, which was 40 students or something, I think you said, from when we started, or
20
students.
Mhm.
Well, 20
weighted, yes.
Weighted students,
Yes.
not real kids.
Right.
Weighted kids. And I did a great job explaining to me how we weight children now. And I learned a lot going through that process. It still does not make any sense whatsoever. How we have positive children and negative children, and at the end of the day, you can't actually count kids. So a couple of things I noticed right off the bat looking through it, and I think it's important that our board understands and the public understands, is the SU is buying down the tax rate by 1.1 million too. Did I read that correctly?
That is true.
So the SU is artificially lowering the cost of their services to the entire district by 1.1 million. The cliff that we're talking about is bigger than we realize. News to me. Again, I'm not on the SU board. Other news to me is that we're 64% of that number because of our size of our students. So out of that buy down, the financial responsibility for this board and our communities is over $700,000, $750,000 that we are already buying down in expenses before the consideration of the buy downs that we talked about using fund balances here, which is another $700,000+. So we're talking about total right now, before we get into anything else, $1.5 million in actual fund balance buy downs in this year's budget alone. That is a huge concern. What do we do next year? Now, the SU still got some substantial amount of reserve funds, so they can kind of play the game for a little while, buying down the tax rates. But there are some other things that I noticed in the budget, which were fascinating. The growth in the budget from 2024 to 2026, the SU budget, is pretty large. I started reading through trying to figure this out, and it's tough. So I want to explain it because it took me this long, and I've been on the school board for a long time, and the public doesn't get it. So the superintendent's budget came back with the superintendent's budget is broken up in a couple different pieces. And then we got assessments that are buried inside of our budget in different lines. But they're big lines. They're $1.2 million. They're not like field trip funds. Like these are substantial amounts of money. And so I started looking through it, and superintendent's budget is reduced. Well, that's a good thing, right? So fiscally responsible, but we have another budget that is substantially larger. And in the documents that were on there, there was an explanation of it. The explanation kind of made sense to me. So I'm just going to read what it says here because I think it's important for the public to know. With the flexibility afforded by Act 173, we continued refining school-wide responsive options in several of our schools for students in need of sensory break, social, emotional, behavioral. Approximately 6 paraeducators and 2 professional staff serve the needs of students. So we're adding 6 and 2 there. So the overall MTSS budget has got a $559,579 increase this year. So at a time when we're talking about cutting these programs, maybe lopping off after school programs and all these other things, that budget line alone in the SU budget is going up $559,000. And with a reduction in federal revenue with $398,000, it represents a 49.2% increase in the cost of that service this year. That's kind of concerning to me. And then it goes on, and there's one more bullet point. It says the largest contributing factor of the increase in expenses is healthcare and federal grant retirement increases for $181,000. All right, so that's kind of important news. We're $1.5 million in the hole. This particular budget, MTSS, is going up by $500,000. So the next page goes on to say that changes to special ed staffing. We're going to see a special ed transportation reduction of 1.43 FTEs, special ed related professional services reduction by 2 FTEs, and we're going to hire 3.9 FTEs of paraeducators, and we're going to hire special education related service professionals at 2.5 FTEs. So that's kind of the movement within it. So then I started going through line by line, which is a lot of lines. And anybody that's following along at home, I'm sorry I'm moving quick, but I figure the people in the room will only tolerate my rant for a minute, so I got to move quick. So open up the MTSS budget, and what you'll notice, line number 5141, is that we shifted $191,000 in administrative costs. The administrative costs weren't mentioned at all in the document. I thought it was a little strange that 6 paraeducators were going to cost us $559,000. Our paraeducators don't make that much money. So there's a shift. Go down the list a little bit further, there's another $99,000 increase in technical and professional staff. So we're looking at $250,000 in administrative costs that were nowhere in the budget presentation that have been shifted. So the superintendent's budget did not go down. it got reallocated to the MTSS budget, and then it didn't. It didn't.
It was partially paid from the title funds, which have decreased substantially. So we took administration that was paid for out of grant funds and had to shift them into the MTSS local funds.
So if you go to the superintendent's budget, you'll see a $37,000 reduction under SU, DOC, and DOO. Were those positions reduced or were they moved over here?
Are you looking at the personnel or are you
I'm looking at the personnel budget where it's reduced in the SU's budget.
Yeah.
And then they show up over here because these positions have been reduced. We have less people right now for the director of operations. He took a pay cut this year.
We have less positions in the SU budget because we had Lori in there, and we also had another business office position that has been decreased.
So I see that you have a $37,000 administrative increase in the SU budget. And then directly below that, it says SU, DOC, DOO, and you have a 33% reduction.
So part of the grant funds is picking him up because of what he does for the food program and the transportation. So he is being picked up in a different, and did you look at the personnel funding graph?
I looked at all of it, but what I also see is why are there $250,000 in additional administrators? So when I was told there's no room in the budget, there's no room in the budget. We have $559,000 worth of new people and $250,000 in new administrators. At the same time, we're talking about cutting $1 million out of our local budget, student-facing programs. I have a problem with this.
The only new position that's in the MTSS that would even be considered potentially administrative is the curriculum coordinator position.
Well, so why is that? Why was that not told to us? When I've been asking for 2 months and you will not tell me
Drew, I gave you a list of all the positions in the SU. I gave you that.
You didn't tell me that it was a new one this year that cost us $250,000. You made me spend
You didn't ask me.
an entire day
You didn't ask me.
digging for it.
You didn't ask me how long they've been around. You asked me for a list. You asked me for a list.
I asked you for an organizational chart, when the position was created and what they do.
Yeah, I don't remember that part. I remember the organizational chart and what they did in the SU, which is what I provided you. And Renee's position is in that position. The other piece of this,
It's also not $250,000.
it's also not $250,000. The other piece that about
$91,970 is in your budget.
it's not $191,000. But
Your budget, you approved it, it's right here.
Can we hear an explanation?
yeah, I guess what I would say is that, as I mentioned earlier, I know that you're frustrated by how I responded about this, but this is a budget that was reviewed by the entire SU board and approved by the entire SU board. In other words, these are things that they all knew, they all understood when they passed it.
Did you know that you're adding $250,000 in administration? Were you voting in favor?
But Drew, there's no additional $250,000 in administration. It's not an accurate representation of what you're saying.
It is.
It's not. It might be listed as administrative in there. Doesn't mean that there's administrative positions being added there that much money.
Added to it.
When was it?
Correct. Is that a new position since
That is a new position
This year.
this current year,
Yeah.
meaning it was added last year.
Keep adding additional positions, and this is more positions. You're adding 6 additional positions at the same time. You're asking us, you're presenting us to cut programs that directly, affect children.
Special education is the bulk of those additions you're talking about. And those positions are deemed required by the IEPs of the kids who they serve. And so
I asked that question, you wouldn't give me that either. Which ones are required by IEPs? I've asked for that data and you won't provide it to me.
I don't know what you mean by I won't provide to you, Drew.
We went down this.
I gave you a list of all of the special ed staffing in the MTSS
And
budget.
you did not tell me, because you told me you couldn't because they're blended. Which ones are required because they are on IEPs, the state requires, and which ones the board has chosen to add? I've asked for that multiple times and you won't give it
I
to me.
don't recall you ever asking me for that distinction that you're making right now. Okay, great. Well, we can provide that. So we can provide that. But the MTSS budget is made up of a lot of different things, right? The vast majority of it. I mean, you can accuse us of that. That's what you choose to do. What I'm telling you is the vast majority of that budget is special education. Like the vast majority. It's something like 50 something positions. Well, again, I'm going to point to the data that I shared with you, which listed the FTEs that were in each budget so that you could see how those FTEs were designated, what the position titles were, how many paras, how many special educators. It's all in that document that you asked for that I gave you. Further, I would say that in that document, I also outlined those that have direct services to kids versus those, and then not just the MTSS budget, but the overall super's collection of budgets. And I was able to calculate about 25% of the entire collection of budgets is administrative. And that's certainly going to be a higher percentage because the SU is an administrative entity than you're going to get in your district budget, which means your district budget is going to be significantly less than 25% administrative. And I keep hearing numbers being thrown around like 40% administrative costs, and that's not an accurate number, even in the SU budget, which is going to be the one that has the highest percentage of administration. So when you're talking about FTEs and administrative costs for salaries and benefits, I'm telling you, it's about 20% in the collection of the SU budgets. So I'm happy to provide whatever information you want. I'm not interested in playing games about it. Just tell me, maybe put it in writing what you're looking for so I can make sure I'm responding appropriately and clearly. And if I can.
Accounting as to why your budget went up over $500,000. $500,000, and you have not been able to tell me why. And you're asking, or not asking.
You read why, Drew.
To reduce our budget by $1 million.
You just read why, because there was a bunch of positions that were out for special ed. And well, Renee's position is not an ad this year. It was in the budget last year. So that's not even an ad.
Let's find positions that we can eliminate to save money in that.
The process for doing so would be to have this board make a motion, vote on a motion to approve, to request from the SU board to reconsider.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
And that's all you have the authority to do, because that's what the SU board already passed the budget.
I'll speak to that motion. So I urge everybody to vote in favor of this. Is what's in the best interest of our kids. As long as we are cutting student-facing programs to add administrators, we're not doing what's best for our children. If this motion does not pass, and we do not, then I would urge the public to vote down these budgets, because it is absolutely ridiculous that in the 11th hour, we're sitting here looking at $1 million in student programs, and we are unwilling to have a conversation about $500,000 in additional positions that we keep throwing in the SU, including this position apparently was added last year, but certainly, Dana, what does this say right here? FY budget 0, F26 budget 191. So it's certainly clear in the budget document that is a new administration of $191,000. Anybody wants to see the budget documents? It'll take you an hour and a half, where you can find them on the website.
Well, that's just a shift of resources from the Title I funds to the local budget. That's all it is. It's not new positions. It's a shifting of how they're being paid for. That's all that represents.
There was no expense in it before.
Because it was paid from a grant. It was paid from a grant, Drew. It wasn't coming out of that budget per se.
Let's show up on the revenue side. This is not the revenue side. This is the expense side. So you're saying that any position that's grant funded doesn't show up in the budget at all?
Not in this particular, this is a local budget. It is a 1001 fund, which is locally raised money. When we pay staffing out of grant funds, it's in a completely different fund. It doesn't run through your local funds because it is not being raised by local funds.
It's a $191 new expense to this district.
Because of the reduction in the grants coming to us and the need to still provide that service. Yes. It's exactly what it is.
I'm sure you notice the significant reduction of funds that are coming in from the title grants, from the census block grant, from the IDEA grant. So the special ed budget is up 7.08%. The problem with how much money it actually is impacting your allocations is because of the reduction of all the federal grants across the board that everybody is seeing. So that is what raised it up significantly.
Bob or Heidi, do you want to just kind of give the background on this Act 173, how Lori over the last number of years has planned kind of for this event, how we built up a balance in order to
Yeah. So previously special education was funded through a direct, I call it fee for service. It's not the right name for it, but we would identify through the IEPs the services that kids would need.
Right.
And then the state would give us the money that would
The reimbursement
for that
for
money
those
as revenue,
FTE
right?
specifically.
So when 173 got passed a number of years ago, it changed that model to a block grant where we get a set amount of money based on our population of kids, total number. And at the same time that they made that switch, part of that was to cure challenges from the lack of funding and from the federal level to the state level in special education. So simultaneously, while they switched it to a block grant model, they also reduced significantly the amount that was coming our way. So this trend of reduced revenue is it based on a 2-year?
It's a 5-year reduction.
5-year reduction.
Next year will be the last reduction.
We'll table
It
out.
does not include any inflationary measures. It is going to just be at one low number.
So that number, so as the staff that number pays for increase healthcare costs and salary benefits, same number of staff, those costs go up. That gap will widen because that number doesn't adjust for inflation either. So yeah, it's a pretty awful situation to be in. Coming in with increased needs in the budget to have an expense difference of 7% is still high. It's higher than we'd want to be for sure. But the loss of the revenue is really where the story goes. And that's why the increase is such a dramatic increase with regards to the assessment. And that's why the SU board chose to use an element of the fund balance, because they recognized that Lori and Bill recognized that this was going to happen over time. And so as the ESSER money flowed in, they used the ESSER money to supplant some of the other grants expenditures to build a fund balance over time, so that with other districts were hitting this in a true cliff when ESSER fund money ended, there's a cliff, we have more of a ramp. And it doesn't mean that it's not impactful. It doesn't mean that the costs aren't going to be feeling painful. It just means that it's more of a gradual decline than what a lot of places felt, because Bill and Lori had built that using ESSER funds. So what Drew's seeing is he's describing it mostly correctly. There's a huge gap, and yes, there are some new positions. The new positions for next year are all IEP driven positions. When I say IEP driven, it's our special ed team gets together and determines, based on the kids that we have, the needs that they have, what those costs are. I will also point out, and I can't give you an exact number to this, but the premise of some of these additional staff to support people, like some of the programs we have here at Leland and Gray, would be higher if we didn't do those, because you'd be paying out of district tuition for a lot of students who would be sent out. So by keeping them here, it does drive up costs. What you're not seeing is how high it would have been if we were paying, $60,000 per placement plus transportation costs and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's awful. This whole situation is awful. And when we built the SU budget and when we went over it with the officers and then brought it to the full board, everyone was well aware at that time that it was a really hard situation, but it was the best situation we could provide for kids. And, as Drew pointed out, we want to do what's right for kids. And so that's how that was developed and passed. And obviously, if the board wishes to vote to reopen that, then they bring it to the SU board, and the SU board can decide what to do with that. We will work with that process for sure. But that's how we got to where we are, some of those changes.
I would also point out that when I was working on putting the MTSS budget together and working with Stephanie, the special ed director, I had lots of questions about, for instance, the TLC program in Newfane. There's a lot of kids that don't need one-on-ones and they just need small group paras, but we don't have a school that has a lot of kids in one grade that needs individual or
same type of support.
The same type of support. So because you end up with more paras because they're in different grades and they're in or out of classrooms. If we were to combine into one school, you would see a more efficient use of paras because of the needs, and there would be more groups rather than individual ones in different classrooms. That's the downside of having these small schools. You do have a couple different special ed programs at Leland and Gray, as well as the TLC program, that are trying to work with a group of students that are in more needs than regular education. I do think Stephanie's long-term goal is to build up the TLC program and bring in students, tuition students from other districts. And so there is a point to that, but she had to build it up first. So there is that piece. And with the census block grant, Lori and I did an analysis about how much it's gone down versus the need in our district. And I think it was determined to be maybe 6,000 per student, that it was a really low number that the federal government is actually helping with the students that actually have IEPs that we need to service. So I just want to put those statistics out because I do think that is something you need to know regardless.
And I'll leave you with this. I know Emily has her hand up too, but the other thing that we've undertaken at central office is an MTSS audit. And so we've brought in a consultant to provide for us some information. They do an independent analysis of our system to determine two things. One, are kids getting what they need? Because that's our essential question. But two, can we do it better and more efficiently? So that study, we started exploring that in the fall, about the time the budget was built for the SU. But of course, to go through vendors and talk to people on the line, set that all up, it couldn't happen prior to the SU budget being adopted. It's possible that there'll be efficiencies that come out of that some of these, if this budget stayed the way that it was, as an example, that some of those positions wouldn't even necessarily be filled based on what we came from the audit. So that's also happening simultaneously right now. And I'll have some feedback from that at the end of this month and start using February to plan what could be different depending on what the audit tells us.
Can I say one other thing? I just also want to say, Drew, I just want to be clear. You made it sound like we're trying to pass through an SU budget quickly. And I think it's important for public to know that the reason the SU budget comes first and at the time that it comes is because we need to get that determined so we can build the allocations for all the other budgets that I'm building. And there's several schools that still vote on town meeting day. And so, for instance, I am trying to get all the documents together so they can get that off to the printer right now. And if we waited until the state gives us the numbers the middle of to end of December, there's no time. So there is a reason why the budget comes before the SU in November. And I just want to be clear about that.
Take that off the table when we have such a drastic job to do.
I understand what you're saying.
It's just wrong. So to say that you are unwilling to go back and look at that, which is what was said in Jamaica, which was said last month, is wrong.
When I said that we don't have the authority to go back and look at, only the SU board can open that up again.
So, and I think it's important, like there are 90 positions in the SU.
Yeah.
Like 90 staff members.
And the vast majority of them are direct services to kids in all the districts, including this one.
18 of them are administrative staff.
Yeah, well, you have to run an organization with 250 employees. You need to have administrative staff. You need to have payroll. You need to have accounts payable. You need to have all of those things. Like these are administrative costs.
Anywhere in there that there's savings. There's not a penny in there. Like if you look at the website, we have assistants that have assistants.
We don't have assistants. You said that. We don't have assistants that have assistants. Like that's not true. No.
So you have an assistant curriculum coordinator, and you have an assistant to the assistant curriculum coordinator. Like
you have a curriculum coordinator who shares the curriculum office has an admin assistant. It's half-time. That's shared by two people. Yep.
There's no room, like there's nothing in your budget. There's not a penny that could be reduced that would help us out of this situation.
There's definitely money that would help this situation. And it's going to impact programming for kids, just like the reductions you're looking at. So there's no way to reduce, I don't think, and we can talk about it with the SU board if it gets to that point. I don't think there's a way to reduce the administrative portions of what you're talking about to get to a place that will find you the savings you're looking for in a way that won't impact kids.
I just want something.
I just don't think so.
Something.
I hear you. I hear you.
Cuts to student programs.
Yep.
I'd like to see at least an effort.
Yeah, I hear you.
Lindsay, and then Emily.
So I did not go through the SU budget with a fine tooth comb, but I know that we are being asked to, it's a huge ask, right? It is going to be wildly impactful what we are about to do, cutting $1 million. That's going to hurt everybody. And that being said, with that much of an impact, I think that we need to be looking in every possible place that we spend money. And if that means that we need to look into the SU budget a little bit, because again, we're covering, what is it, 60% or whatever of that is coming out of our funds. I want to look everywhere. And that's why I seconded this motion. I think it's really important that we are looking at every possible thing. If there really is nothing, then there really is nothing. But I mean, like, there has to be something, because we have to find $1 million. So this isn't a little ask. And I would like to do it in a way that is the least impactful to the most number of students. That is the goal here for me. I want to figure out how we can have taxpayers that can still afford to pay their taxes. People aren't going to have to sell their house and move out of Jamaica because we can't get our act together over here. Like, we need to do something about this. And I think that we really need to look everywhere. I understand it's impactful to other districts for the SU to open that budget and take a look at it. But I think that if I would hope that all of our SU representatives, had they known that we were going to be looking for $1 million, may have approached that SU budget slightly differently. And if looking at that one more time a little closer helps this situation even a little, I think it's a effort very well spent by everybody involved. So I would very much like for everyone to consider looking at that as a way to help everybody here figure out how to find $1 million. That's all. That's my second.
Appreciate it. Emily.
So, during this conversation, it has been implied that the spending at the SU level, it sounds to me like it's being implied that the spending at the SU level is taking away from students' services that we provide at our local districts. And I will strongly push back on that and say that the SU budget is here to support our students in every way possible. And the MTSS budget, which has come out of, has been created as a reflection on the changes that have happened over the last, I don't know, maybe it's 4 or 5 years with Act 173. The costs of special education and direct services to kids are required by law, and we must meet those obligations. The revenue has been reduced, and in the process of reducing the revenue, so there's two sides, and Heidi will correct me if I'm wrong, but there's 2 sides of revenue reducing. 173 was a reduction in revenue over the long span. Heidi just explained it. A 5-year or even 6-year reduction of revenue in the census block model, easing out over a period of time. And in the process of doing that, the school districts were to work with, in our case, we worked with District Management Group to create services to directly meet the needs of our kids in the building at a reduced cost, and not send our kids outside of the school districts, the SU, and create extraordinary costs. That's the impetus behind Act 173. Our district took that very seriously. Our SU took that very seriously and did an amazing amount of work over the last 4 years on our MTSS services to kids. And that is direct services to our children here all the time. I know, and this is nothing new, this has been happening for years, where people, when they feel the pain of having to reduce in their district, their eyes go directly to the SU budget. Makes sense that people will say that, but I just will implore all of you to please remember that this is still direct services for our kids. Heidi, I just want to say I did look into Act 173, and there is a mechanism built in for inflationary increases over time. I was actually going to submit a bill in the legislature to make that change, and I found out that it's already there. So I don't have it in front of me. I meant to send it to you and I forgot, but there is a mechanism that will increase once the reductions happen in the
Okay, so once the final year
yeah,
has.
once the
okay,
final year has,
okay.
there is a mechanism built into the law that
Okay.
will give us an increase. I can't remember the percentage, but if you look at the law yourself, you'll see it. It's written right in there.
Thanks. It was an AOE person who told me that there was nothing in there, so.
Yeah, well, they were wrong
Thank you.
because I would have submitted a bill to get that, and it was
Thank you
already
for
there.
looking into that.
Yeah. So I would just urge us to remember that this budget is the SU budget is there to meet the needs of kids. It met with plenty of discussion and review by the SU board, and I fully support the budget. I know how difficult it is, and the reductions that we're going to have to make we are a high spending district. We are trying to find a way to reduce our spending. And no matter whether we do it in our local budget or whether we do it in our SU budget, it's going to be painful. We just simply have to find a path through this. And the legislature is fully aware. It's very clear that the legislature and the governor are fully aware that something needs to be done and something needs to change. But in the meantime, we still have to deal with a budget this year. So I strongly support the SU budget, and I will vote no on this to reopen it.
Thanks, Emily. Peter?
I would just like to disagree with Emily on one point, that I don't think that the SU board looked into the budget as much as we have been looking into our budget, because at the time we didn't know that because I'm on it, I admit I supported the budget that we put through, but I do think that we need to take another look at it. We are looking so much closer at our own budget than the SU board did at that one, that the SU board needs to take another look at it. I mean, we need to see if there is anything in there that we think we might be able to reduce.
Discussion. Who do we have out there?
I think it's Kate and Emily, I believe.
Paul. Was Paul out there?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Got it. All right. Any further discussion?
And Paul.
And Paul. All right. Seeing none, we will start with Zoom. So, Emily, how do you vote?
No.
Kate? If you're saying anything, you're on mute. Is she there or did?
She's
I thought she was
She's right there.
right there. Okay.
Kate, can you hear us?
All right, we'll come back to Kate. Paul?
No.
Sarah?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Kate, do we have you back?
I don't know what to do.
Does anyone ever sell?
Might just be a ghost. Maybe she's not even here.
Yeah.
I do that sometimes.
All right, where are we on the counts?
1, 2, 3.
Yes.
6.
1, 2, 3, no. Yes, 3, no, and you have
6, yes, 3, no.
and Kate hasn't voted.
Okay. Well, the yeses are going to have it anyway, so. Last chance, Kate. Okay.
Anyway.
Nope, it does not matter. My vote, it is a 6-3 in favor. Yes, so we will take that to the WCSU. And
When's our next meeting?
The next one tonight?
22nd, right?
Wait a second.
Okay.
Okay.
Where's that meeting?
Right here.
I would just think, can I just say, One more thing, I would just really encourage everybody to be as open-minded. I know that not everybody is in for the dig of looking, but just first off, just because you look doesn't mean that you find something. And secondly, just because you think there's nothing to find doesn't mean that there's actually nothing to find. So it could go either way, but let's all be as open-minded about finding every possible way that we can approach this, because no matter what we do, it's going to hurt. And so let's figure out the best possible places to make it as least painful as we can, I guess. That's all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good discussion. Thank you. All right.
Are we gonna talk about any more of this budget stuff?
We have to.
Yeah.
We really have
Yeah,
to.
before we move on. Yes.
Yeah, can I just stop and pause and give you guys a little timeline? So the February meeting is really your deadline for adopting based on the annual report getting published and the warning being done for the articles in time for the annual meeting. That's a month away. So we don't know the outcome of the Jamaica vote yet, obviously. So we still have two budgets. So we'll have to, that will drive, it down to one budget, presumably. But for us to come back with a new budget, and let's say the SU thing notwithstanding, we will probably need to have a special meeting in between to make that formal, whatever. And so to be able to have some direction on some of these things or other things, the use of fund balance, for example, whatever, all the things that are discussed should be
Other things to look at.
should be talked about here, so that I think we have an idea of where to go. And I also think that and again, I'm not advocating for a position on this. I'm just suggesting you guys have the conversation, is getting to the threshold possible or even desirable given what we know. I understand the Jamaica tax rate is going to be hard hit regardless. And others are lower. But that's something you guys should, that was the target initially. That was before the number increased to reach it. So those are things that you guys should really hash out today so that we know what we're bringing back to that special meeting and probably in a couple of weeks, so that we can have something to vote on and adopt on that February date.
Just so I'm clear, on budget one, all these things we're still got 149,000. Is that correct?
Yes, and can I just add a little bit of bad news?
Perfect.
Really? Go ahead, Heidi.
We've gotten a new long-term weighted ADM and it went down just a little bit, but it's going to impact about another $6,000 on the budget. So it went from 0.86 to 0.33 along with the number. So specifically, your number is 840.55 is what the number is now. It was 86. It went down like 0.33. And that just happens to be another $6,000. Just wanted to throw that out there because if you think you're getting to the threshold, you're not quite there. So
Cash 155 or 181. All right.
so
And of course we have that's for tomorrow.
Can I ask a question about so I see that there's other considerations included. Do you have dollar amounts that we can attach to those so that we can have a conversation about what that means for the
other considerations.
or what other considerations included? Eliminating 3-year-old pre-K, reducing the capital investment. Well, so reducing the capital investment, we can talk about what that means a little bit, but I guess
Sure.
so.
So if you went from 2 pre-K classrooms, each having 2 teachers and 2 paras.
Each having one teacher.
Sorry, yes. So that there's 2 total teachers and 2 total paras. So if you got rid of one program, so that you have 1 teacher and 1 para, it would save $164,000.
That's the 3-year-old.
So if there were no 3-year-olds, you would, it would have to be in one room.
You'd have
So you're
one
saying-
room of 4-year-olds in the district.
So, but not that we would lose revenue, we would be paying more tuition out. So just be aware that the tuition we pay for pre-K would increase because those 3-year-olds,
But
10
that may
hours.
also include we as a district just added a para, if I'm correct, to that room, right?
The stuff that you guys had this year with the request from the principals are not in this budget.
right. They
They've
were
already been
one-
removed.
Okay.
Those were a 1-year thing.
So it's the 164 with no extra humans attached to it. We
Correct.
haven't added. Okay. And that's,
The real savings is less than that because you're gonna pay out some tuition for the 10 hours.
so I guess my question is it possible to eliminate, to move to one pre-K classroom if we have to run Jamaica School?
Yes, you could just move the pre-K program to Jamaica if that's what you wanted to do. It could impact attendance, but yes, that is a
Or,
possibility.
or you provide some other direct educational service at the JVS building.
The 150,000 was the capital investment. You have 150,000 right now in the budget to go into capital fund. Drew asked me at the last subcommittee meeting to check on what that fund balance was. It is 144,000 sitting in capital funds. It's not a lot of money. But we could remove that and that would be another 150,000. I talked to Greg Frost. He's on. He is also had a couple suggestions. You know, there could be some projects we don't do, a one-time thing to remove some building operations expenses out of next year's budget. It's not, none of these would be long-term solutions, but we don't know where the state's going to go with what the recommendations are going to be. So, you know, he could probably save the potential for another 100,000, but give or take depending on the projects.
Means you generally won't have, if you're reducing the capital and the 100 projects, you're not gonna have really any
It's
stuff
going to
done
be
with the
regular maintenance it's going to be done. It's
cleaning.
Yeah.
Not the number person here, so you're gonna have to let me ask 1,000 questions that is
Sure.
exactly the
Yep,
same
yep.
question over and over again. So just to clarify, we were planning to add 150 to the 144 that is currently in there.
correct. That's what
Okay.
you have been doing.
Right.
Mhm.
So if we don't add it, there's still 144, and that 144 as is enough to cover just doing the basics?
That 144,000 would be there in case of a major problem that came up that the
Right.
board could vote to spend the fund balance.
Craig's got his hand up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Greg could speak.
Go ahead,
to it.
Greg.
Hey, yeah, and of that 144, I mean, we were hoping to do the fire alarm panel at Newbrook this spring too, which I would estimate is going to be between 70 and 80 grand. So we had actually had plans of spending some of that. We've kind of put the hold on things, looking for more of a lead from you all. Yeah, I mean, I looked at it the other day. It's like if we didn't do any of the flooring that we had scheduled at Newbrook, Townsend, or Leland and Gray, we could save, another like 40, 50 grand, whatever there. But again, I mean, you all know what this can lead to, if we start doing year upon year upon year of not investing. So, yes, we can do it. If, we're happy to do whatever it takes. I'm happy to, sharpen the pencil and find every penny we can. But the hard thing is it's also not a long-term solution. So, but just looking for a direction from the board, really.
Probably nothing, but what if we didn't phase out Journey Away in 2 years and we just did it, cut it right off? 164 to start. And I know you had plans of putting that some
You
transition.
mean, just make sure I understand what you mean. So would you still have that pay for the position? Or would you just put it directly towards the overall bill?
You could put it towards PBL too, because PBL is looking to expand.
We might not be able to expand
Right.
because you can't afford it.
Right, but I'm just saying that fund balance is sitting there and you could direct it to be used in
Yeah,
a
so you're talking about not funding the position at all, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Gotcha, okay.
yeah, just
How many, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm the worst at this, I apologize. how many students physically participate in Journey Away?
And did
Last year it was, 10
So,
students.
so the $80,000.
What's the name of that document? I have an analysis. What was your name of your document? Possible reductions.
Yeah.
Can't find it. I can tell you how much. Why can't I find this?
Possible, possible maybe.
But it's
Oh, there we go.
this, the $80,000 is this year's, tell me what that means. What is
$80,000 is the salary and benefits for the position for next year. Right now, it's in the budget.
Yes.
By reducing the 80,000 from the budget, the idea was that the fund balance is covering that year.
So it's 80,000 this year and every year after.
So the total in this year's budget is 120,000 because you transfer 31,000 to the Journey Away program. That's how it's been in the last couple of years that you've had it. And then with salary and benefits, it's about 120,000 that is in this current budget.
And that's 10 kids actively participate. And obviously I know
Last year.
That was last year. So well, there's a difference because one of the things last year was that the trip was really long and very expensive. So what they've been working on, Dan's been working with Jessa on this, is developing it into like shorter that can engage more kids in it, and therefore the cost per pupil would be less. But yes, at the time it was that cost divided by 10
and
kids.
historically it's been about
When it was the China trip, it ranged from 12 to 24 over the years.
so we'll say 10 to 25 is a reasonable number of students, depending on how that gets possibly revamped.
Sure.
And then the next question to follow up on that is the project-based learning. We have $50,000
$50,000 reduction. Yep.
And if by reducing that, what are we left with in that?
So they're left with still an increase of 38,000 for PBL.
And they have 60,000 this year
60,000 total is what?
for supplies, for travel, for
And
anything.
that's how many students?
That's everybody.
Just how many students?
250?
Yeah.
250. Okay, so what I'm seeing is that we're currently spending about $120,000 on a program that directly affects between 10 and 25 kids. And we're also spending about $60,000 on a program that affects 250 kids.
And Dana's mission and vision, he's on here, he can speak to it, but his vision was to kind of bring those two worlds together so that the travel component of Journey Away would be embedded into the PBL world. It would all be one. And so the 2-year sort of ramp for that would allow for that blending to occur. And then I believe his plan was at the end of that Journey Away position would not exist. And that it would be all in sort of one thing under PBL. And so there would be a savings over time eventually. What you're talking about is like steepening that ramp a little bit. So, I mean. I hear what you said.
Cut anything. I wish we had a really amazing endowment. Any really wealthy people out there that are hearing me, feel free, contact any of us. We are all in, okay? Until that moment happens, I would like us to consider looking at eliminating the Journey Away program.
And just so to be clear, so by that you are implying that the ones, whatever 60, we'd reduce the 31 and the remaining fund balance would just go towards lowering the overall budget this year as a single buy down, and the position would not be funded, is what you're saying.
That is my suggestion for the moment.
I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So.
That impacts what happens with project-based learning is maybe another question, but my goal is to make it not as painful, as little pain as possible for the most number of students. That's my goal. Really just a numbers thing. I hate it.
I was just suggesting, and maybe not ready for it now, and you continue the conversation, but if you're going to utilize that fund balance, however you choose to utilize that fund balance, you should probably have to do that through a motion. So it's documented for the building. And that would then further direct us to build it that way. Again, you don't have to do it right now. Continue your conversation, but
Talk a little bit more about after school fund balance. Any of the balances other than general?
Sure. Let me bring up my fund balances here.
the after school one has, I think, 95 in it is what I had in my note.
Yep, 95,000 for that one. Oh yeah, that's at the SU level actually, because that's where it gets paid out. But yes, it could be attributed to all of it. You could use all of it. You can leave some there in case it goes over. So fund balances, you have, as you know, 1.3 million in your reserve fund. The journey away is actually up to 191 because of the slight surplus. Yeah, for the 31. Yes, that just got, I just moved into that for this from this current budget.
Journey away fund balance?
Yep, 191. Really, all the rest of these are, so capital is 144, 346. Oops. There's a water project fund balance, which I think Greg is using up for 7,033. And all the rest, food service is.
That money's gone.
That money's gone. Okay, thank you. I figured as much.
Well, not yet, but you assume it will be. Yeah, we've got contracts in place to finish the installation of the tanks and tie them in and the electrical in hopefully over February break.
Food service has 250. I don't have the exact number right in front of me because it's a different fund, but it was 250,000. I should mention that there's a project that Jake is looking to do here at Leland and Gray, adding some refrigeration and walk-in with a grant he received for 35,000 and some fund balance. He'd like to expand the refrigeration because the summer program with feeding families needs a lot of space that he doesn't have enough refrigeration for. So we'll be using some of that fund balance.
Program fund balance?
Yes.
You said we have 250 in that, and this is.
Can you clarify for me if that summer food program really ended up as a revenue source? I mean, we've made money on that.
The first, right? Last year. I mean, so the summer of 23.
But not last year.
Not last year.
Oh, okay.
It was a little bit over.
Oh, okay.
He fed more people at summer camp, and he also went from processed food to more whole foods, but it is at a cost.
Yeah.
It is at a cost.
So that's why on this list, the 30,000 reduction of summer food was a way to kind of like get that at self-sustaining level. So the food wouldn't be as good, but it wouldn't be all processed. It would be in the middle. Got to find that sweet spot. That's what that 30,000 represents.
And the reduction of after school and summer school. One we have 200,000 reduction, the other 150.
Yeah.
What is each of those?
Yeah, what those look like. So I think Jamie's on here too. He can speak a little bit too as well. But in short, the idea was we're for $100,000 price tag when you're trying to get to $1 million, like something that's not part of the required program. Like we wanted to look at it. But I would say that Jamie is very prepared to alter his current offering to make it match the funding level that the board is willing to put towards it. So he can reduce a day a week. He can shorten the weeks. He can shorten the summer program. He can maybe have higher ratios for staff to students. Like he can do things to move that dollar amount around based on what you guys are willing to provide. Right now, the 400,000 gets you what it gets you. And so to reduce that would just mean there'd be less.
Reduction on Fridays or
Those kinds of things. So the more you reduce, the less you will have. Yeah.
Yes.
I told you you're gonna hate it. So can somebody remind me what we, like last year or the year, maybe even like 2 years ago, what was because I know we've been increasing how much we're putting into the summer programs and after school programs. What did it used to be? I know that's not necessary.
Well, at one point you guys had the 21C grant, which paid for some, and then the grant, we didn't get the grant. And then there was a commitment to continue to fund it and staff it and so on and so forth. I don't know off the top of my head, but my guess is that last year was probably the first year of that big commitment.
Yeah, because I think prior to that, you had about 75,000 in the budget that you contributed locally, and the rest of it was grant funded. Last year, there was more. It didn't turn out to be as much as we expected, and I'm just trying to find the grant expenses here, because we still had a couple grants that were being utilized, the Bernie grant and some ESSER or ARP after school. Looks like
for this fiscal.
This for 24. And it looks like we used 245,000 out of grant funds to help cover that. So you still had about I don't have that right at the tip of my
Okay, sorry.
yeah.
Can I speak to that, Bob?
Sure. Go. Sorry.
So my operational budget last year, I was running off about 375,000 for just after school. This year, what I put forth for the 400 and some change thousand was for after school, summer, and to expand to a high school program, and to add another summer program for middle high school students looking to explore career and college opportunities. So that's why I put in for an increase, because I was looking to increase programming as well for our community. Like Bob said, I've been working on budgets like crazy this fall, creating like 50 different scenarios, because I had a feeling this was going to come up. So I can really tailor the program for what's needed for our community. I just like the board to keep in mind, these are programmings that over 50% of our population of students are using, both summer and after school, when our statewide average is only 30%. So while, I deeply respect everything that the board has to do, I just, really want you to consider what kind of effect this would have on our community.
Thank you, Jim. I think it's back to what you said, right? What is having the most impact, the positive impact on students. So I would just ask everybody to kind of consider that, how much of a reduction do you want to make there versus that may not impact as much. Just numbers I was jotting down. I just want to make sure I'm correct. So Journey Away, I'm talking fund balances, 191,000. Cap that we currently have in there is 144. And we had already built in 150 on top of that, right?
What's
Capital.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I wasn't. So yes, if we remove 150 from capital.
That is a reduction, but we still have 144 in there.
Well,
For annual projects.
Unless, as Greg pointed out, he was going to upgrade the fire alarm system at Newbrook. So if you wanted him to go forward with that, it would reduce what's in the capital fund. So yeah.
Gotcha. And so the 144 that we have in there now, Greg, if I'm remembering correctly, you said 70 to 80 for the Newbrook project, and then it wouldn't leave much else for.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some outstanding quotes that I've got to get with Heidi on too. We can hold off on the fire alarm panel for right now. But like we made a repair in the gym to repair the basketball hoops and the winches that run that, and we just got the quote in to run all the electrical for that today. So that's like 11 grand. And then there's a little bit more to run the electrical for the water tank project too. So we have a few outstanding things, but we could definitely table the higher cost project of the fire alarm project to try to keep as much there if that's how you guys want to go with it. I mean, I'm happy to do whatever you guys want to do.
I also think you're going to run with a little bit of a surplus because we had more in the budget based on Jamaica running. So I will, for the next special meeting, I will pull together exactly where I think we're standing. And you could choose to do some of those projects out of the overspend on your current budget because you probably have a little bit of leeway, but that's up to you. And I'll bring that. I did not have put that together for tonight.
And then in the food program So there was 250.
250, yep, and Jake will probably be spending some of that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. How much did he?
He hasn't gotten me all the quotes. I would think that it's probably gonna be around 50 after he spends the 35. I don't know, that's a wild guess. Greg, do you have a more, you're working with him on that?
Yeah. So we got to cut out a little bit of tire and put in an 8x16 concrete pad to put the walk-in refrigerator and walk-in cooler on. So I would assume that's going to be like 8 to 10 grand, and then something in the rain. Then we got to pull the power out there.
And I know the materials cost a little bit, like about 20,000 over the grant he got. So would you say 50 out of the fund balance is probably fairly accurate? Do you think the electrical?
Yeah. That's a safe number, I think, on the high end.
Okay.
So we could potentially move use of that to 200,000 and still be safe.
I'd say there's 200,000. I wouldn't use all of it, but
5 or something, leaving something in there.
I would say 150. I would leave 50 just because of not knowing how the summer food program goes.
Right. Okay. Any other thoughts? Thanks.
I would be inclined to consider eliminating 3-year-old pre-K. Again, how many 3-year-olds do we currently, like, what's the average for the last couple of years? I know it's not going to be exact for next year, but.
Well, I have right here a graph of the amount of kids in our SU that are in that's pre-K 3 is about 26 kids right now.
That's not our.
That's all of our towns that we're getting money for. I did a graph. The data analysis guy did it for me. So that shows how many we have in our buildings and how many we're paying for. So there's 26 or 27.
How many are just in our building? Because this 164 that we're talking about is just the ones that are in our building. That's the ones I'm trying to figure out.
I think historically the best way to think about it is that Townsend, when Townsend had the 2 rooms, one was a 3-year-old room, one was a 4-year-old room. You probably don't know, we weren't here, but were the numbers similar?
No, I wasn't really
You're not really
involved.
involved with that either.
We usually ran about
Katie might know, actually.
30, 35 kids, I want to say, depending on the year between the 2 classrooms.
So about 15.
Yeah.
But this year it's significantly less because it's in Jamaica.
Well, there's some 3-year-olds in Townsend now, because the Townsend one is now mixed.
So we'll say 15-ish kids.
And the 164 wouldn't be a full reduction. You're saying that we'd have to net out the
Right.
payment of tuition. So
Correct.
I don't know what that would.
So I would, depending on where the site was, I think would determine what I'd increase for tuition, because I think if the site's at Jamaica, because that's what the board chooses, you may be paying tuition for a higher number because less, Newfane people who might be using a Townsend program aren't maybe going to go all the way to Jamaica. So I think that will, so right now you have 8 kids in Jamaica. If you went to one program and it was in Townsend, maybe that's what you would have to, 8 to 10 kids we might add. That's just under 4,000. So probably about 40, let's just say 40,000 for now that I would increase in tuition costs.
So we're looking at like 120 to be safe.
Yeah. Do you want to go line by line through the budget? Do you,
Let me take a stab at it. So come back to Journey Away. If we started with, let's see. Start with the capital, right? So it's 150 we could eliminate at the deferring maintenance. The food program, we said, as Heidi said, we moved that to 150. That's an extra 50. So you're at 200 at that point.
Wait, taking 50 out of it, what you said?
Additional. Yeah,
the
we went
food
from-
fund
We went
balance.
from 100 to 150 reduction.
Oh, 150 total, yeah.
Correct. Yep. And you mentioned the real program. We say that's a net 120. At that point, we're looking at 320. Buying between those three things. That's without Journey Away.
And what's Journey Away? So is Journey Away,
$120,000 savings.
well, can you explain that to me? Because there's a 191 fund balance.
Okay, so I'm just looking at what you have raised locally, what is in the current budget, not what's sitting in the fund balance. So
If we eliminate it,
you
as
can
a
do both. You
program,
could eliminate
what
it,
happens to the fund balance?
and then you can make a decision about how to utilize that. That's what we talked about, making a motion. You could use it
Okay.
against the budget. You could use it to be used for PBL expenses, whatever your pleasure is.
So what you're saying is 120 in the budget right now for that.
Right, moving money into the Journey Away fund and for salary and benefits.
So if you pull the 120 out, you will additionally have
So you have
191 in a fund balance as well.
The way you have it here now with the 80,000.
pulled 80,000 out of the budget to be used the fund balance. So we would be looking at an additional 40,000 on top of that if you eliminated it.
Is that an 80,000 reduction from the 191 fund balance? What would be the?
That would be, that's a reduction from the actual budget, the bottom line of the budget. These are all minuses on the actual budget bottom line. So
we could pull from that fund balance and still keep this as is. Am I reading it?
yeah, I mean, you could do either or both. So what this was an attempt to keep the position in staffed,
Yeah.
but not pay for it with local money, pay for it with the fund balance.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Not new money, I should say, still local money, but pay for it out of the fund balance over a 2-year period. So if you're eliminating position, you're not paying it either. Plus you could reduce the 31 that you have in the budget to go into the fund for next year. And you'd have the 191 as well already sitting there to use.
Like you get back to the point of what Lindsay said about how does that impact PBL?
I mean, Dana, you still here, Dana? Maybe you're the best person to speak to that.
I am here.
Do you want me to repeat what they're looking for, what I think they're looking for?
Yeah, go ahead. Just for clarity.
I think the question is if the position did not exist, forget about the fund balance, all that stuff. If the position did not exist for next year, what would be the impact for students and the PBL program in general? Is that the question?
Yes.
That's the question.
Well, so first of all, the Journey Away class, could that continue forward? You're going to lose the fundraising for the travel. I guess I would say this. I don't want to give you a sloppy answer, but I think the impact on the class and the opportunity for travel would become very challenging. One of the questions I wanted to ask was, you're talking about eliminating the position, but I know that there was also the request for an increase in funds to support expeditions and intensives. Is that on the table too? I don't know where you are in terms of thinking about this.
Dana, I think that's probably why we're asking that questions, right? We want to make sure that the most students can have those kind of impactful. Am I reading the room right?
Yep, that's good.
And so I just want to make sure I understand the intent. If the board decided to, maybe eliminate a position or the funding for it, that the shift would be on our intensives or expeditions instead, where teachers are tying those expeditions to learning through classes. I mean, I believe I understand what you're asking. I don't want to just give you an answer off the cuff, but I want to check with people at school who are my experts. But I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure that the Journey Away class itself could occur without that position. Could intensives and expeditions occur without that position? I believe they could. I can definitely go back to school and work up a more detailed explanation if you like.
So Bob had mentioned earlier that there was some sort of preliminary discussion or plan that you were working on to basically blend the Journey Away program with the PBL, and that, that like the original proposal to basically take some of the funding out of the budget and use the fund balance to continue it for a period of time to allow that to come to fruition made sense to me in terms of that transition to continue to allow our students to get out there and see the world, which, having not grown up here and not being from here, I think that's incredibly important. You need to get out of this and go see the rest of the world. So, if that's, if we were to eliminate that position and take that fund balance and put it against the extra budget, how much does that kill your plan that's in its infancy? That looks like a lot.
No. I again, I want to be careful. I just don't want to give an impulsive answer because you are you're taking the responsibility from an individual, if you will, and shifting it to many. And so how do individuals engage with that endeavor? Like anything, some people are going to jump in and be excited, and other people are going to be nervous and go into it slowly. But that being said, I do believe it's the direction that Leland and Gray has to go. We need to have, we need to have expeditions that happen in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. We need to make sure that they're occurring for our high school students with various courses. I can't tell you that the exact impacts, but we're going to have to make progress on this either way. I guess I would say that either way, we have to move forward with this. It's the right thing to do for our students. So
I just want to clarify. I think what I'm hearing is that the PBL intensives that involve lots of those are shorter trips.
Yep.
Some of which at least are shorter trips. I don't know if I can say lots. I don't know how many different ones there actually are, but I know there's several trips going on.
Sure.
That PBL intensive won't be hugely impacted by the elimination of Journey Away in terms of its ability as a PBL program to continue.
That initiative has really been transformed by Laura Tabachnik. And we've put a lot of staff meeting time and PD time in so that teachers can plan and prepare for that and be well organized around it. Part of the increase in the budget line was we're doing one intensive this year, and people would like to try to do 2 next year. And so they took the general cost of this year and just doubled it, and we're like, let's ask for this and see what we can get. So a year ago and even into this year, that they're really, you're talking about 2 separate initiatives almost, but they really do blend. They're different styles. They have many of the same purposes, but different costs. I'm kind of spilling beans about a rebranding probably a year before we're ready to do it, but you guys are bringing it up, so you'll have to excuse me sort of hemming and hawing through it. But yeah, yeah, we have to continue with the initiative.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so you need guidance for the meeting on possibly the 28th. Can we just kind of run through and just maybe pick a straw poll on each of these? How important? Right. Journey away coordinator salary benefits as is, or elimination?
I would personally lean strongly to eliminate, just based on the number of kids.
Okay, other thoughts? Eliminate.
A slightly, mostly related question. So what is our goal that we're trying to hit? Are we trying to get down to the per pupil spending? I feel like that is, before we start eliminating things, we have to make more of a decision on that. I mean,
right, I jumped to that assumption, but I assume everybody here is in agreement that we do not want to exceed the spending threshold. Is that it?
I think
Is that a fair assumption?
if there's any way we can do it without wildly compromising what we are giving our kids, that we owe it to our taxpayers to do that. We are here first for our students and second for our taxpayers, in my mind. That being said, they are holding hands. They're standing right next to each other.
The second question is, how much fund balance are you willing to use in the process? So
Right.
we already know the SU is 1.1 million.
Yeah.
Which is a cliff that we're all looking at. So if we spend a chunk of fund balance to bring it down, we haven't solved our overspending problem. We've delayed it. If we defer maintenance, we haven't solved our spending problem. We've delayed it. So we just need to be clear if our goal is to hit the spending threshold, but we're going to buy that down with our savings. And we have to be very deliberate about that because it doesn't go away. And, we've been playing this game for a lot of years, and so has the state. Now, this is why we're in the situation we're in, is because we have positions and programs that we couldn't afford, and we haven't recognized that in previous years because of the fund balance moving forward. That being said, we did do a mathematical challenge at the budget discussion of what it would take in order to bring Jamaica's tax rate to zero. This is for people that don't understand how messed up the education funding formula is. We have to cut $2 million out of the budget in order to not impact Jamaica's taxes.
Affect the CLA.
To counter effect the ed funding formula.
Yeah.
Because keep in mind, we lost a whole bunch of weighted make-believe children.
Yeah. I mean, the CLA is an impact. Unfortunately.
But even when we played with the CLAs in other towns, their tax rates did not go nearly the rates that Jamaica did. So it's not just the CLA, it's the way that we've created this mathematical equation, which apparently we can't seem to get a single answer on because they keep coming up with new students every time we meet.
And by we mean the state.
But we would mean the state comes up with
I'm not creating those numbers.
Correct.
We mean the state, but not
That's
you.
interesting that, in a simple mathematical equation that's dictated to us by the state, over the last 3 months, we've had 9 different numbers.
Yeah.
So I think that's, it just shows how.
The negatives kids, the negative kids, right?
Negative kids. The weighted negative kids, right?
Yeah.
the weighted negatives.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Significant.
All right, other thoughts on Journey Way?
Yeah, doesn't impact enough students for its cost.
Ways of the few, outweigh the money.
Sarah, any thoughts? Sorry, Kate, I think I see your hand.
Hi, thank you. And sorry, I couldn't speak before. I guess I'd like to understand a little bit better why the initial suggestion was to reduce it partially and now it's a better option to cut this entirely. I just don't want to see us do something short term that will be hard to bounce back from, assuming we can and we want to offer these opportunities, or we want to merge this with the PBL program in the future. Maybe it's what's necessary, but I'd love to understand that just a little better.
I mean, it wasn't my idea, so I don't know if someone else wants to speak to why you've changed. Yeah.
Why I suggested it is because we currently offer a PBL program that is leaning harder and harder toward intensive experiences, many of which involve traveling. That affects every student at Leyland and Gray, which is 250 students. And if we're looking at a way to save money in our budget, that a program that costs us $120,000 and directly affects between 10 and at best 25 students, it's a lovely, amazing, incredible opportunity that has been offered. And I think that we can't continue to do that. We just can't afford to do that. For the amount of dollars and the number of kids, I think that it makes more sense to focus on the PBL intensives that affect everybody. And it would be lovely if, again, there's any really wealthy people that would love to shower us with an amazing endowment, we are in, and we would do all of the things. But until then.
Gotcha.
Bob, I just want to clarify and ask Dana a question about that, because I think it might be related. Dana, the Journeys position, did they currently, and in last year and this year, support the PBL work, or are they exclusively doing the Journeys trip?
In the spring last year, they started to blend and combine, and so they've been doing that some this year. There would be an impact for sure. The speed that we can develop our systems and processes with the staff to engage across the school in a way that I would hope we could get is going to be slowed down.
They're not entirely separate buckets then. There's a little bit of blending already, is what you're
There
saying.
has been, yeah, especially this year. Like Laura and Jessa have been working together to make sure that these things come off correctly. So,
and I asked the question, I want clarification on it, but if that money isn't just for those 10 to 25 kids, there is an impact, but it's harder maybe to kind of ease that out.
It's getting harder. It's mixing.
Is that something that could be transitioned over a year? Like,
and that gets to Kate's question, that was sort of the intent of the buy down, the multi-year ramp, was to provide space, and maybe 2 years maybe it could be shorter than that. I don't know, but that was the premise, was that you had this money, and if you did it over a 2 year period, then it created that opportunity for that blend to get tighter and tighter, so that when it went away, that there was, the mission was kind of embedded in it. You know what I mean? It's really, that's more of a Dana question, is what would the pacing of it, what's his best case versus worst case scenario for pacing, and what sort of, maybe where's the sweet spot on that transition? That might be a Dana question, but that's why we started it with 2 years, thinking that would be a good ramp to do that.
What I wonder if Dana might speak to, I've been in a few meetings talking about the two separate programs and the blending, and I think it's important to note that one of the reasons PBL asked for an additional $88,000 for next year was because they wanted to expand some of the travel, and some of what I heard of, for instance, Joe Toll creating a mid-century history kind of a lesson to work into his London trip, and the different kinds of things that were happening was exciting. And while maybe extensive overseas trips aren't what you're looking for right away, I mean, I think the teachers have really embraced sort of working throughout the school year and involving some travel. I am wondering, because it was suggested to me a few times that you could offer some stipends when it comes to organizing the travel piece of it. I know that Jessa has done some of that. She's also utilized a travel agency for some of the overseas stuff. And so while if you think about cutting Journey Away, you may want to fund PBL a little bit or not use the fund balance completely from Journey Away and pay some stipends, which don't involve benefits and that kind of thing, for some people that might want to spend extra time to help organize the travel. Because what I'm hearing is you're concerned that they're not going to have the opportunities that they have had with Journey Away. So I think, and you know, Dana, again, you could speak to that. Do you think that that would be that I'm accurate in what I'm conveying?
The concern I have around stipending people is, and Bob, I think can vouch for this too. The staff at Leland and Gray, the majority of them have more than one role. They teach and they do something else. So thinking that I'm going to be able to stipend somebody to pick up some of the planning and organization around it, I think it's risky.
You might have office staff that might be willing to help, though.
Possibly. I do know Jessa, Laura, and I have been meeting. We're meeting every Tuesday this month to really refine the vision around the progress of this evolution at Leland and Gray. As I said, we're kind of spilling beans early here, but you know, I understand that the difficulty that we're in financially. Absolutely, there would be repercussions. I don't want people to think that there wouldn't be. I would expect us not to stop what we're working on. I can't tell you, you know, in an instant what those ramifications would be. But I would, at the same time, if the board decided to move in that direction, I would certainly start, like, we're going to have to figure out as a staff on how we can move forward with it too.
How do you remind me what the fund balance would be if we had the 80,000 in place for Journey Away? How much remaining?
If we had,
as it's written right here, what is
so right here you would still have. I'm looking at budget 1. 80,000 is being moved to the fund balance, and the fund balance would pay some of her salary and benefits for the next 2 years. So you're looking at another 40,000 in the budget, which would cover putting money into the fund or using it for supplies, and some of it would be benefits. Does that answer your question? Because I'm not sure. I don't know if I misunderstood.
Is there any, like, I'm just trying to think if there's any fund balance that we could use to reduce this, like keep that in place, but take some. It sounds like there is no fund balance.
Journey Away has a fund balance of 191.
Right, and so the way it's written is we were going to use that fund balance to pay Jessa to continue for 2 years until the fund balance was gone.
We're going to use 80 of the 191.
Right, for 2 years. So 80 would cover 80,000 for 2 years, which would phase out Journey Away program.
So the Journey Away line item would come out of the budget or would be in the budget, but it would be covered by this fund balance.
Right.
So it would be a reduction in the actual spending of that Journey Away. We'd be phasing out the program, but allowing that the 2-year ramp down phase out so that what Dana can't articulate clearly yet because it's too new would be allowed to come to fruition, and we would have someone still who was fundraising and travel focused to get PBL where we want it to be instead of yanking the rug out from under this thing as it's in the beginning.
Jessa would have to fundraise whatever she needed to do any travel if she were to do traveling. So there's that piece, because the 30,000 that's still in the budget, if you left it in there, could help cover some travel or supplies, but it's not going to do the extent that she has done traveling. So she would be asked to.
Keep in mind that this fund balance originally was built up over every other year to pay for the trip to China. That's where the fund balance was. That's how it was set up. So every year, you guys put money into that fund via the social studies department line item, and there was revenue coming in over the history of the program, either from the Freeman Foundation to Chinese tuition students. And then that, when all those things dried up and COVID happened, we didn't do the trip. There was a bucket of money there that was enough to do one more trip. In the time since then, that bucket has been added to with some fundraising from JESSA and some grant stuff, and reduced the course of the expense of the trip last year. So like it's been like this ebb and flow of money, but the original nest egg, if you will, was supposed to be the 2020 China trip. That didn't happen, and that's why the nest egg existed. Does that sound familiar? Like we present, Jesse and I presented to you guys several years ago about this and the history of it, where the money came from, how we wanted to use it, what the thinking was, all that.
I feel like there's a lot of confusion right now. I feel very confused right now. The confusion is in me about whether or not the Journey Away position, coordinator position, I feel like there's some talk about it being wildly integral to the success of PBL existing. And then there's also talk about, no, it's not super integral. It's been a little bit blended, but we could also be okay without it. And I've heard both of those things said very emphatically, and I don't know what's real.
Well, I mean, I think in fairness to Dana, that this question is being thrown at him right now, that he probably maybe doesn't know the answer. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? Between those two things. I think
they're not
before the next budget committee meets, maybe they could have a little more clarity on what that actually means.
Well, I'm really hoping to have some numbers in and out of the budget for the next meeting. So I would like clarity by the time we leave tonight. So I don't know if what you're saying is mean you're leaving it up to more discussions behind the.
My personal feeling is that I would love to eliminate it and focus instead on PBL, because PBL affects every student. I obviously, if we decided to do that and then all of a sudden it came back that like, oh good, PBL means everyone's going to sit in a classroom and listen to, we're going to watch movies now. Like, never mind, that was a terrible move that we made, that everything about that is terrible, right? But I don't believe that that is the case, but I'm also confused as to whether I'm right. I don't want to screw up the PBL if possible.
I mean, PBL is project-based learning, so we're not watching movies exclusively, maybe some element of it, perhaps.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, I think what I have heard Dana say is that the multi-year plan that he has worked on developing is what this budget reduction plan is sort of geared towards. So to ask him to reduce it further, make that ramp much steeper, he's not exactly sure what that will look like. But there will be an impact, is what I heard him say. The extent to that impact is unclear. My point in trying to answer Kate's question is that I wanted to make sure folks understood that position, the person who's currently in that position, isn't just exclusively working on an island on Journey Away. That there is already kind of a overlap, and so there could be an impact from the rug being pulled out, metaphor there, to existing programs.
That impacts for sure.
So it really depends on the extent of that impact, how much money you're talking about. Are you doing that and simultaneously reducing the PBL request? Are you putting money back into that PBL? Like, how are those buckets being modified will probably inform that rollout.
That's a great point too, right? So the 50,000 reduction in PBL, that's
right.
The direction we want to go, right? Hello. Jump around. What's the impact of that, the reduction of 50,000?
That's data. So data. The question is, what's the impact on reducing 50,000 from the increase request for PBL?
Yeah, I mean, either way, you're going to have either your journey away travel or your PBL is going to be reduced for its experiences. And so we're already in a position where experiences are going to be impacted. You know, we're going to have to be creative. Is fundraising going to make up the difference so that you know, a journey away experience can go as expected? It's possible, but I can't tell you, you know, how's the community going to respond in terms of donating? There's a lot of variables when it comes to PBL experiences. We definitely need that funding there to engage with the types of activities that we have been.
Was that increase in PBL, did I hear you say that increase was in an effort to do 2 intensives versus 1 intensive?
Yes. But
Okay.
but here's the funny thing too, though. We haven't done our first set of intensives yet. So, you know, it's like we're talking about things we haven't even done. But that's the hope, though. And I believe the staff is going to deliver on it. I think it's going to be great. We're going to learn a lot from it. But like these are really difficult choices. That's the reality of it.
Something we didn't mention. So see if I get this right. So you were talking about a 2-year transition. So 80/80 plus some supplies potentially. What we haven't said is, well, what if we kept this but used the fund balance, which I think would be 111. I'm doing my math right, give or take.
What the 191?
So basically, like funding it for this year, allowing the transition to happen quicker, and then taking the balance that we have and transitioning to the more PBL intensives, which is
Describing a 1-year transition instead of a 2 years. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. So not quite eliminating, but getting there at.
And would the remaining fund balance be then used for PBL and to offset some of the reductions to PBL? Is that what?
Well, yeah, that's what you're basically saying. You do the 80 grand for 80,000 for 1 year. You do it for 1 year. And you take whatever's left of the fund balance and you eliminate the reduction in the PBL funds.
Still net you 61 reduction.
Yeah.
50 comes off the list, but the 111 then goes to help. I got you.
And you're also eliminating the 31,000 that would be transitioning to the fund.
So there's an additional 31 annually that goes towards the program. That's it's sort of a nest egg annually.
Yeah. Correct.
So if you're taking that out, if you're taking that 31 out, which is a separate line item, and you're paying the benefits, the salary and supplies through the fund balance, and the remaining fund balance is going to support the transition plan, as we call it, whatever that looks like. You're basically shortening that ramp to a year, but keeping the money invested in the blending process and using it that way. That's what I'm hearing.
Looks, if we leave the position in the budget, we eliminate the 31,000, we apply 100% of the fund balance to the bottom line of the budget.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like that's what it really means.
And the 50 reduction of the 50 goes off the list or stays on the list. That's the part I'm unclear about.
Oh, the reduction of
Right, they asked for 88,000.
I think you said this.
Take it off.
Yeah,
Take it off the list, but the fund balance becomes their bucket, in essence, for the PBL, for the rollout of that PBL.
Yeah, and they got 1 year to make it. Pretty much. Sorry, Dana.
When you say take it off the list, do you mean
Where it says 50,000 reduced project-based learning, it's now 0.
50 would,
No
the
reduction.
reduction of 50 would come off.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got it.
But I want somebody to add those numbers up. What all this means.
Yeah, well,
Already suffered over my head.
So instead of that line saying minus 50, what you're really going to have is whatever the balance of that fund balance is, be taken off the bottom line as well. So it's actually a 60,000-ish difference.
So it's the salary plus about 80 grand is gonna come out of that line, or out of that budget, or that sitting money, and the rest of it will be applied to, right?
Roughly 60,000.
Yeah.
And the 31,
No.
Salary has to stay in the budget. The salary benefits can't come out of our budget. Like, it still has to show up as an expense.
right, it's just gonna use the fund balance to pay it. Right.
Yeah, I don't mean,
So we're still spending that money.
Right.
Right.
For the 1 year off ramp.
well, you're in a sense designating that fund balance towards the journey away for 1 year and then PBL for the rest of it.
Yeah.
It's in essence.
Shift.
Entirely a win-win, but it's,
But where
What?
does that, where does that put us for the big picture of things? Because I think that we're still not.
No, I'm just looking for my AirPods.
Sorry. If we're still not gonna be under that number that we're trying to hit, in which case I would like to open for discussion whether project-based learning does indeed still get some reduction, because I would be comfortable with a 1 year off ramp and one set of intensives versus two. Yes, two is better, but we're trying to save big monies. So I would, if that,
So some flex on that.
right,
Yeah.
if that increase is.
Yeah.
So this gets to Peter's question earlier, was what's the comfort level with fund balance usage in general? Do you have a target number you want to be at? General fund, is that different than food? Is that different than after school? Is that different than journey away? Like, where do you guys want to be in that? Because that will really drive the rest of the list, right? Because those are some big numbers too, in certain cases. So if that drives the rest of the list, maybe that's the next piece to resolve as we approach 2 hours into the meeting with still some other items on the agenda.
What do we do if we buy down the tax rate this year with fund balance next year?
What do we do next year? Yeah.
Because I'm guessing.
There won't be fund balance to buy down.
Right, and our salaries are gonna continue to go up, and we're gonna bet the health insurance continues to go up.
Not taking that bet.
And so if we don't address any of these actual structural problems right now,
Mhm.
then we do what later?
Yeah.
I think the journey away piece that's kind of isolated, right? That's a unbalanced that, programs.
Yeah.
Transition.
But that's the only elimination from the budget so far, unless I would be open to saying that we eliminate 3-year-old pre-K for now and future budgets. And that's an actual thing that we get to keep. Again, I wish we didn't have to. Can I, sorry, everybody, this VEMSA support for programming. How many students did that affect, and what was that?
Yeah, so this year it was around 20, and it was 3 or 4 students, maybe, that's my guess.
Last year was 3 after school programs down there and an EFT.
After school program as well. Yeah, initially
All the Wednesdays and.
initially the program was designed, the idea conceptually was to create an opportunity for kids to do a level of emergency training, and that it was sort of built together with the A&P, the anatomy and physiology class, and there was an attempt to kind of create this sort of synergy between those two. It then expanded into a junior, I'm not sure what they called it. Dana would know, a junior, I don't know, emergency response team at Leland and Gray. Some winter activity stuff, some other things. So
Total number of students between winter activities,
The academic piece was small. I know that. I can't speak to the others. I have no idea.
So somewhere between 10 and 20 kids all year, $20,000. Okay.
And again, my sense is, much like after school, my guess is that if we went to VEMSA and said, we have X amount of dollars to do that, whether it's not a full reduction to the 20, but if there was a partial reduction there and said, we have this amount of money, what can you create for us? Like with Jamie, there'd be some opportunity to create something. I don't know what it would look like. Fair to say. But for the big one where we needed more money, we did the full amount. On the small one, we needed less money, we did do the whole thing.
And I'm for most number of dollars for least number of kids. That's what I'm here for. So.
I'm just throwing numbers into the budget to try to give you some guidance. I took out 150 for capital, 150,000. I've taken out the money for pre-K 3-year-olds and added in 40,000 for tuition. I have removed, just for this purpose, some salary and benefits for Journey Away. I've removed the 31,000 that would go into the fund. Right now, I'm just trying to find PBL, and I just want to get a sense of what you decided, or what you would want me to put in for PBL on supply. They have 62,000 in this budget. They asked for an additional 88,000. What is your pleasure for it being in here?
25, split the difference.
Let's try 25. Let's see where we're
Okay,
at.
let me just get my,
Reduced from the current year?
Reduced from what they asked.
Reduced from the ask.
Yeah.
so 25 reduced from the ask. Okay,
An additional.
okay, so let me put that in.
I would.
Still an increase.
We could. Yeah, still an increase.
$50,000.
And then on the food program fund balance, increasing that to 150.
150, and I'm not putting that in. I'm just going to take it off my other spreadsheet. So 150
After school,
after school. You want 75, or do you want 95?
Oh, fund balance.
fund balance plus the actual program.
Right, right. What do you want to do?
Where does that?
Where are we at without those?
Where are we at without that is, so we're at, without the fund balances, we're at 623,461. So 624,000 that still needs to be reduced. So then if you want to take out 150 from the food program fund balance, you're at
Did we say there was going to be 150?
4. I mean, that's
No, we concluded it wasn't going to be. Oh no, there was 250. Never mind.
right.
My bad.
Right,
Sorry.
okay. So that's 474. 474,000 you need to reduce to get to the threshold.
So what is our total reduction right now?
Your total reduction,
773.
yeah, that's not what I was adding. I've been subtracting. Yeah, we started out at 1,023,800 is the number that I have for the threshold right now. 1,023,800 minus 173. So you've reduced it by 550, 339.
Is that inclusive of the reduction of after school?
No.
And okay,
No.
yeah.
Thought you just, okay.
You want to go back over what
What was the 623,461 number? I thought that was the.
That was how much more we. That was before.
I was on the other end of that.
No, sorry.
I got you.
That was how much, and then we applied 150,000 from a fund balance.
I got you. We're
Okay.
good.
Okay.
I did.
So what would you like to do with after school?
Well, so again, remind me, this was an increase.
What's in the budget what's in that budget right now?
401,000.
And his ask is 400. Is he asking for any more than that?
That was his full
That was,
ask.
that was.
Perfect. Okay.
So what you have in there right now is how much more do we need to eliminate to get to excess?
Definitely.
A little bit under.
And what have we not touched? Is it just the after school and the
That doesn't
general fund?
include any capital fund.
See, VEMSA, after school. I mean, from this list, it doesn't include those things.
And we haven't used any general fund balance.
I mean, I think the VEMSA program's awesome, but with 20 kids and $20,000, it's the biggest dollars in the least number of kids, right? That's one of those items that I guess I would be inclined to remove.
Using previous logic, I'm there with you.
I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
BDCC thing impacts, I would say, all juniors and seniors. So it's a bigger group.
And we gave them more than we gave them last year. We gave them more this year?
We asked for the same amount, which is
We gave
25.
the same. Okay. And do we know what, I know in the previous years, we gave more than some of the other schools did?
Yeah, there was some years where other schools didn't contribute.
Yeah.
Originally, there wasn't a contribution, there was a grant, and the grant went away.
Yeah.
And so then once the grant went away, they started asking for some
Gotcha.
contributions.
Yeah.
What do they do?
So that's the program that provides like the reality fair. Christy does, she in essence co-teaches the senior survival class with Terry. She provides resume support. They do tours of businesses. I mean, it's sort of the mission of BDCC is to build the economic future of the county, and they do that with our staff in conjunction with them. They make our staff or our students can end up being Wyndham Ready certified at the end of their successful completion of co-ops, maybe even senior survival. That might have changed, but it's like a blended service that they provide with our staff. We're contributing as well, obviously through our staff, through that senior survival program, and juniors are also accessing programming through them as well through co-ops, other things. So it's a pretty huge impact. I think it's a really valuable program.
Is there any way, could you speak to, if we were to reduce by the 15,000 that's on here, because it is blended with our current staff, what kind of impact that would have to existing programming?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know how they build their budget for that. It's really their thing. So like we would go back to them and say, we're going to give you 10 instead of 25. What's that going to do to what you can do for us? And then they would tell us. I don't know off the top of my head what that means. I mean,
Could you do that?
I know the reality fair. I mean, I could do that for the next time. There's a lot of time and money and expense that goes into putting that on for our kids. Yeah. So I don't know the answer.
Posted the reality fair, but it hasn't been just our kids benefiting from that.
Correct. Yeah. All of Wyndham County high school kids have come to that. So, yep.
I'd be inclined to reduce it, particularly because we have additional funding already in our own budget that will help offset the impact of that. Seems like it will be less of an impact than some other things we could be talking about cutting. I personally don't love the idea of reducing after school and summer program when 50% of our entire student population accesses that. That being said, I know that we're growing that program, and maybe now is not the time for growing that program. And I would be inclined to have the conversation of what we can do to not grow that program and also still meet the needs that we're talking about meeting, and what that reduction actually looks like. Is that what this $200,000 reduction translates to, or is this just a number that was sort of pulled out?
So the two different pages have two different dollar amounts to try to keep that. Again, one of the things that we talked about as administrative unit was that we wanted to make, as you described, the reductions that will hurt the fewest kids, right? But we also took the lens of what's our core mission and vision around what our programming is. And so after school and summer programming are absolutely beneficial. And Jamie's done a fantastic job revolutionizing that in the last several years. But it isn't something that's necessarily in our core. It's also free to families, which means that we're paying that difference as well. Jamie and I have talked a little bit about what's the impact of charging. We don't know what that would do to numbers. We don't, like, there's a lot of variables to that, and there's a sliding scale, and who's tracking that. There's a lot to it, and he's nervous about that endeavor, which I don't blame him. But there may be revenue that could be gained from that. He acknowledged also that the Friday, for example, has a lower participation rate, so maybe one less day is okay. What I'm hearing you guys talk about is, at this point, reducing some academic programming and not necessarily reducing extracurricular programs. So that's, and I would urge you to consider, like, what's that message to families. We're providing something that might not be required and cutting things that might be really beneficial to kids. And not that this isn't beneficial to kids. That's not my intent. I think it is. I think, like I said, Jamie does an excellent job with it. I just don't know how you cut academic offerings and not that sort of thing as well.
PDL as because so far we have
PDL, Journey Away, VEMSA, the BDCC things, all those I consider academic offerings.
Yeah. 3-year-olds.
The 3-year-olds, academic offering.
Yeah. Yep. I would say that I'll talk for me personally. My hope with eliminating Journey Away is that becomes more emphasis put on the PBL program, and that we actually end up spending less dollars, affecting more students, and everybody gets the amazing opportunity. I see that as a win, not as a loss, as long as it's well done, which I have all faith will happen. BDCC is an academic thing that it is academic, but it is also an outside organization that we are also have staff that we are not eliminating. We are not cutting our budget of that. We are cutting an outside organization's budget. So that's a whole different ask than cutting our after school program that we are currently funding. And again, I would say our goal should be providing the best experience and in all things for all of our students, as many as we can. I would like to impact as few students as possible and save the biggest dollars we can. It would be lovely to not take anything out of our budget, but we have to find things. That being said, 50% of our students in K through 12 are participating in some form of after school and summer programming that families.
I don't think it's K through 12. I think it's 50% of our elementary and middle, maybe. Yeah.
Of elementary and middle. Okay, so K through 8.
Perhaps. Jamie has his hand. Maybe he can clarify that participation rate for us.
Yeah, it's K through 8. And I just want to put out there too, with all the budgets I've been working on and everything, I can say confidently, looking at some reductions and everything, if we had around 300,000, we could still meet the needs of our community. I feel like strongly. with that budget amount. We would lose some programming in after school. We would lose a day. We might lose some of the clubs we're able to offer, but we would still have quality engaging programming for our students. Summertime, we might lose a week. Instead of 4 weeks, be at 3 weeks. But that would still allow us to keep for that our week-long program of career and college development, which I did want to say too, BDCC, Christy Betta, is working with us and collaborating with us on that as well.
Sounds like our contribution is going towards that work as well.
It is.
Yeah, I think we need to really, I want to emphasize what Bob was saying about academic programs versus after school. After school, again, great program, really beneficial to the kids. We kicked this around at the budget meeting. We had a discussion about essential and required. And just because something isn't required doesn't mean that it's essential. After school falls into that, not required at all, period. But essential, very useful. But I think when we start talking about taking programs like VEMSA and BDCC, you want to take VEMSA off the table entirely, and BDCC gets a big haircut. That's juniors and seniors. That's something that we spent years and years kind of figuring out and got beat up on because that's part of the senior survival. And, teach me some real world things. Well, VEMSA and BDCC are real world things that our kids need and want. And I don't think we can take them away. I think we can cut them in half, but I don't think we can zip them. And I think after school I think a lot of these things can, half is a start, it starts to be a really reasonable target. It's like, okay, you're going to get 10,000 instead of 20, and you're going to get 15 instead of 25, and you're going to get 200 instead of 400. And, see what you can make work. I mean, we're cutting, we in order to affect the least amount of kids, we also have to spread the cuts, and I don't think there's anything that we do. I mean, it pains me to eliminate 3-year-old pre-K, but I think we can do that because there are some state alternatives to that. But other than that, I don't think there's anything we can look at just getting rid of entirely. I mean, we have to transition gracefully into this stuff so that we don't do it. Start talking. I think half is reasonable.
So then what is your suggestion? Because from what I'm hearing, we can't only cut half and get down to that threshold. So what is your suggestion on us getting down to that threshold? If that is
just half of BDCC and half of
right, but from what I'm
not half of the other stuff, 200K out of after school, that gets us pretty close. And then, we need to talk about what our fund balance target is. We have $1.3 million in the general, and then we have talked about all these other fund balances, and there's discussion about whether there's going to be a cap. And I've heard arguments that we shouldn't have any fund balance versus we should have somewhere between 5 and 10%. Well, if we go somewhere between 5 and 10%, and I think that's pretty reasonable, that means if we buy down the tax rate some, and we'll still have a reasonable fund balance to do things. I think a combination of cuts and buying down the debt is reasonable. Does that kick the can down the road some? Sure. But the whole state is having this problem. The legislature made changes last year mid-session, and the entire inaugural address was talking about how we're going to have to focus on this and deal with it some more. We've got the Listen and Learn tour. We've got the Hatchet Woman interim Secretary of Education. Some change is coming. So we need,
because I mean, from what we hear from that commission that was put together, they said, nah, system's pretty well screwed. We can't do anything about it. That's not what they said, but that's what they said. They were like, you want us to fix it? Well, we don't know how to fix this. The public rise up and take down the government?
Precedent is January.
Amy. And then Heidi.
Yeah, I appreciate fully what you have to say, and I understand you guys have some of the toughest decisions. What I do want to challenge you on, though, where yes, after school may not be, required by the agency of ed. I'd ask you to look at our community and what it is providing for our community. And keep in mind that after school hours is the highest incidence of crime rate as well. Also, students in after school, they get a free meal. And for some of those students, that's the last meal they see for the day until they come to school the next morning. So I think that looking at after schools, while it's not required, it does provide, nourishment. It does provide engagement. It does, help advance and push our students to be better, and giving them that solid support that helps them be more successful during the school day. Thank you.
I agree. I think Heidi, did you have something? And then Peter?
I was just gonna give us an idea of where we're at.
Oh,
with
please,
those suggestions, but I mean,
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that you were at 253,000 to cut if you cut 200,000 from after school. And with half of BDC and half of them, so you're at 253,000 more to cut to get to the threshold.
That's before using
Any other fund balance? The only fund balance we've used so far is food fund balance for 150,000.
We use the
anyway.
fund balance too.
It's helping to fund, so I'm not.
Got it.
So it's a transfer, so I'm not really keeping that in my calculation.
Capital?
I took out capital.
So it's 250.
And to drop.
The SU drops about 6.
Yeah.
You'll make it. Because
We're 65%.
so whatever that number is, but it's not dollar for dollar.
Help the other district.
Heidi, does that include three-year-old program?
It's taking out the 3-year-old, it's taking out one pre-K teacher and one para with benefits and then adding in 40,000 more for tuition.
How does close rate?
If JVS were closed, it would take out another 144,000.
And that vote happens tomorrow.
So I hate to cut off an amazing discussion, but it is 9:22 right now, and we do have a lot more to get to. And I would suggest that the very last thing that we have on here, which is the superintendent evaluation, that we perhaps think about moving that to our special meeting on the 28th at a different time. That's, I don't think anybody is going to have any power or capacity to the muscle to do that. So, all right, we have enough on that? We good enough to?
How are we leaving after school? Because I'd like to bring the budget. I mean, so far, I think I know what we're doing.
We said half.
I don't know if that's consensus or not. I don't.
I personally would like to put it at 300,000 rather than 200,000. I think that if Jamie thinks that he can provide I trust his assessment on that, of him providing a really good value for 300,000.
Is that number without any fee for service in there? I'd like to see a budget from Jamie that includes a sliding scale fee for service for all after school programming. And then what he needs from us, that doesn't have to be free anymore. It can be sliding scale.
Good idea.
See if we can get it down a little under 3.
Jamie?
I mean, I can tell you, I ran some rough numbers, and after school, we roughly estimated we might see 20 grand for the year.
That's on a sliding scale based on income, or is that donations?
No, that's sliding scale based on incomes as well. It's like I said, it's rough numbers. But
cheapest daycare on the planet.
Yeah.
Well, you got to remember too, like I mean, this was some of the stuff Bob was talking about before. If we start charging, my feeling is we're going to lose numbers big time. Those students, those families that don't necessarily need after school, all of a sudden won't be at after school. So we'll see a reduction in numbers.
What was the after-school budget last year?
You had 306,000 in your budget. You didn't use all of that because there was grant funds that helped defray the cost.
And that was just for after school. I'm proposing
summer.
300,000 for after school and summer this year.
Oh, right, because the summer was covered by the grant. Yeah.
All right, what do we want to do? 300,000, 200,000, 250?
I like that option here.
Feel like we need to find the money.
Yeah.
And we can say, oh, well, I wish we didn't have to do this. Said that about all these things, right? I wish we didn't have to cut any of them.
Yeah.
We need the dollars, so.
Well, you have some fund balance there, so.
Yeah, but even, this was, so what's our number? If we included these things that we have, plus the 3-year-old pre-K, the Journey Away thing, all of that. What's our,
got us there.
what was the number? The total?
The total for what's left to get down to the
Yes.
threshold with after school at 100, at still having 300,000 or at 200,000?
Whichever number you have.
When it was removing 200,000, essentially putting it in half, it was going to be 253,000 that still needs to be cut to get to the threshold. You could potentially put it at 200,000 and use the fund balance of 95,000, which wipes out any fund balance, but gives him almost 300,000, which, and I know he's filling out some grant, applications. So potentially between sliding scale and some grants, you might be fine. Or you can go to 250, whatever is your pleasure, but you do have that 95,000 that is in the fund balance for after school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I don't.
you said go with what?
What about the fund balance?
What about the fund
200
balance?
with use of the fund balance to get it back up. The 200.
So that reduces, the 200 was 253, so another 95,000 is going to bring it down to 151. You got 5,000 less, so 147. So if Jamaica were to close, you would be at right around your threshold.
That's without using any of your 1.3 million
Right.
fund balance.
And that's not, and we haven't even talked about what would happen at the SU level, whatever they decide to do about your ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
All right.
close enough for tonight.
See so. All right.
If you feel like
Thanks,
me ask
everybody.
1,000 questions.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Patty.
Thanks, guys. Really. Yeah. All right. Let's see if we can start buzzing through here. Minutes of 12/9/2024.
So moved.
Have a second.
Wait a minute, hold on. What's happening?
We're on minutes. Sorry. Are you-
On, you weren't
Yeah, yeah.
adjourning or anything, right?
No, not yet.
Oh, I'll make that motion.
Not yet. Hey, easy now.
Yeah.
Leave
So I got a motion, and was there a second?
We're there somewhere.
Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Any discussion? Get all the names right? Everybody
Never mind.
in the right place?
What we have.
There, I'm in there as Bertrand.
And if it changes, it
But-
changes.
Hold on.
Awesome.
Close enough. You can understand the intent of it, right?
Better than the Wyndham meeting.
Now when people try to Google me, they won't find it.
There you go. All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Sorry to interrupt. I have just a very minor comment. I'm officially at large, not Williamsville. But
Aye.
Ah,
She's listed as a.
Yeah.
Williamsville isn't even correct.
it's a community, which.
I mean,
rolls up
technically, I
their eyes.
also.
8 and 9 should be switched.
And mine? Sure. I'm just curious where we're at. Should technically redo it.
And we changed the ones on the website to reflect the actual town name and not the village name. But at large is at large. But she's a resident of Newfane.
That's right.
But at large
But
representative.
it should say at large.
I think we put in parentheses the town of residence for the at large.
All right. All those
yeah,
in-
I should just mirror Sarah and the other at-large members. That's all. It should just be the same for me as it is for them.
All right. As amended, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. All right. Correspondence. Doing correspondence. Oh, wow.
I believe these are the CLA letters. Rest of the chair unopened.
CLA letter.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we may need copies of those after just to confirm they're the same ones that we have.
Okay. All right. I'll open up to that. Financials. You'd like to go?
Yeah, I got it. Move to approve pay orders 38, 39, 40, 42, 44, 45, and 46. Totaling 46 twice, actually. There was a $500 scholarship check that just kept the same number. The total for all of those is $500,019.42.
Nick could say. All right. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, motion carries unanimously. Let's see. Set tuition rate for FY 26, SY 26.
Yes. We need to set your tuition rates. I did some calculations, but I really want to just recommend, I got the tuition from a couple schools, but that included Burton, and Lori and I spoke before she left about how she handled tuition. Doing the calculations, you could definitely charge more, but I think we have some students that choose between Burton and Leland and Gray, and so we try to stay competitive. Burton is setting their secondary tuition at $21,972. For us, that's a 5.3% increase from the current of $20,865. So I would recommend the secondary be $21,972 to match what Burton is doing for 26. Elementary is currently at $18,200, and I was suggesting a 4% increase to $18,928.
I move we set the rates as Heidi recommends.
Have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Thanks, Heidi. Did it? High school choice.
So annually, by statute, boards are required to take action on high school choice. You may take action on transfer limits. You shall take action on capacity. This is the same thing I do every year with you guys. I have the law quoted and then a recommended action step. So on the transfer limit, this is the amount going out. You can set a cap on that. But what we set for a cap to leave would be far greater than what actually leaves. So there's not really value in doing that. So I would just not do that. On capacity, that's the amount coming in. We're required to set that. And it's basically a function of like how many kids could we entertain that wouldn't drive up our cost. And so you're talking just high school. So again, we generally don't get more than a couple. And so just a standard number of 20 kind of feels like it covers us. But you have to do that one. So my recommendation would be to create a capacity of 20 for high school choice in the Title 16, Section 822A.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. All right, principals reports and superintendent report. So obviously, given the time, if we could maybe just limit it to a couple of minutes each, that would be fantastic. We'll start with you, Randy.
Sure. So yeah, you have the reports. I'll just highlight a couple of things. First, right now at all of our schools, our teachers are in the midst of their winter benchmark assessments, which measure students' progress in reading and math using AIMSweb, other assessments. And that provides classroom teachers with data about their students. In the coming weeks, we have our data meetings where classroom teachers, our academic support teachers, special ed teachers, and or principals sit down and review student data to see how students have progressed. Helps us determine who will be part of those academic support groups for upcoming cycles. And so this is an important time for us to be getting to know, to collect some data to know how our students are responding to the instruction that's being provided in the classroom, as well as in those small group intervention groups. Winter activities began. We have students going to Stratton, ice skating at Memorial Park in Brattleboro, gymnastics at the Gibson Aiken Center, and we have some students going to rock climbing at Newbrook. Just wanted to thank all the parents who volunteer to help transport kids to Stratton, and to Chris Jers and Suzanne Paw and Scotty for all of their help in organizing that. In December, before the break, we continued the TES tradition of Craft Day. Big thank you to the TES School Club and the National Honor Society from Leland and Gray, who provided a lot of volunteers, as well as our art teacher, Suzanne Paul, for helping to make that possible. The book fair in December was also a great success. I just wanted to publicly thank AST academic support teacher Sheila Overman, helping to organize that, and to all the families who patronized that, and especially those who gave some money back to the Share the Fair Fund, which allows us to extend opportunities to families who are financially disadvantaged to also take part and enjoy purchasing new books. And in terms of staffing, we have welcomed Madeline Russ as that paraprofessional position that you approved earlier this year for the remainder of the year. She's been a substitute in the district before and is very familiar with our systems and our students at our school. And I also just wanted to announce that our valued administrative assistant, Robin Patnote, has submitted her resignation effective this Friday, and we've begun a search for a replacement. And I just wanted to thank Robin for all of the contributions that she's made at Townsend over the past few years in that role and in the other roles that she served. So just thank you to Robin. And the rest of the things are on the report.
Great. Okay. I want to go ahead and thank Randy, not only for talking to you about our benchmark assessment and the processes we have in place to use that data to support our kids, but also for working with me to create the winter activities programming this year. We had our first day and it went really well. His staff and my staff melded really well. It went great. I want to thank Suzanne Paw and Jason Gragan. They are working together with our fourth graders to submit a second year of the Artful Ice Shanty, which is like a thing that the museum and the retreat do together. We are focused this year on threatened and endangered animals here in Vermont, and we are going to be we're going to have our Artful Ice Shanty on display at the Retreat Farm during the Winter Carnival if you get down there. I also want to thank Carrie Toll, our school counselor, who planned using Mac Shack money, which is wellness money, staff wellness money. We're going to have a monthly after-school gathering for staff, and the only rule is you're not allowed to talk about work, which I think is a really nice idea. The staff been under a lot of stress. We've been asking a lot of our staff, and I think that's a great idea. I don't know if I'm invited. So I'll find out. I also want to thank our PTO is incredible, and we had our kids earned through PBIS. They earned a special treat. So working with our PTO, we had a hot cocoa and recess celebration on December 20, right before we went on break. It was a blast. The kids went on our story walk, which our PTO also set up in our yard. They had a new installation, a winter storybook that the kids followed. I also personed the winter photo station, so I took pictures of the kids with hats and carrots and all kinds of stuff. That was really fun. Thank you thank you for giving me the time. I know that we're busy, but if you have any questions or if you ever want to stop by, I would love it if any of you would call me up and ask to stop by and have a look at what we do. I know a lot of you stop by every day because you have kids there. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Yep. Yeah.
Sure. So everything is written there in the report. Probably the biggest highlight that folks might not be aware of is at this time of the year, we're really looking to next year in terms of what we're going to be working on for our skill set. I know we're leaning into improving direct instruction. The staff, we have to have discussions to exactly figure out what that's going to be. We've also been looking at the NEASC feedback. We have to develop our continuous improvement plan. So it all kind of blends together. But that's fun work to be doing. We're in the middle of winter benchmarking. We have to talk with staff tomorrow for a little bit about the high school STAR 360 benchmarking that we're going to get into. We'll be running that for a second time here. I don't know, things are going well. It's just busy. Winter activities are underway. So that's brief, but there's a lot going on.
All right. Thanks, Danny. And Bob.
So I only have one announcement, really. Have my cabinet report you can review. But I do want to publicly say this. Despite the challenges that you guys are facing and how hard this is to go through all this as a group, January is National School Board Appreciation Month. And other than the lucrative salaries that we give you,
January was the right time for that.
Yeah, right. It's the time when you need it the most.
No one in Vermont in 2025.
There'll be a hug for you after the meeting. I just want to say on behalf of the administration, we do appreciate what you guys do. Some of you know this, but I was a board member in my hometown for 8 years. I get it. I get the challenges. I understand, particularly when you're doing this, you might not be the most popular people in town. Reductions, there's votes happening. Like there's a lot, and you guys are doing it. And I just want to say thank you and know that your staff and your administrators appreciate you. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thanks, Bob.
That was supposed to segue into my evaluation, but
you're right. Good speech.
Come back again on the 28th. It'll still be Jane.
Yeah,
that's right. Okay. In that final month.
Can we fix the access to the budget on the website so that they can be located on?
So just so people are, as you mentioned earlier, so you go to access any materials from the board, which includes all the budget stuff. you go to the SU website, upper right-hand corner, there's a drop-down menu for boards. You click on West River. That brings you to a page that has a bunch of big buttons, and you can click on the members, see who the members are. You can click on agendas, see all the agendas. And there's one that says reports. When you click on the reports, you click on, in this case, probably 2024, because that's when the budget first came out. And then you look for that meeting, the December meeting, and that's where you'll find those documents. It may have been updated with the 2025 folder with today's date. So you may have done that today. I don't know. But that's how you get to those documents. It's actually quite easy once you understand the system. That being said, system is going to be overhauled. I'm actually meeting with our IT department tomorrow, I think, to talk about what the challenges are around how we do document sharing with the public and how our documents face the public. And that is sort of in response to the data breach piece that we had earlier. And so that whole website, that place may look differently as they go through that. So I'm meeting with them to talk about that interaction. The challenge that you guys have, in addition to the unwieldiness of Google Docs sharing on a website, is that you also have a separate website. That's the WestRiverEd.org site. But we're not going to duplicate the materials in both places. It's not feasible for us to do that. So we have a pointer that basically brings you to the SU site to find those types of documents. So it's more than we have the capability of pulling off to have those things duplicated, especially a draft 2 comes out, you update it one place and you forget to update it the other place, and there's a lot. So that's where it stands right now. The SU website is really the one place to get all reports, agendas, minutes, board member names and dates and years and all that information. It's the reports button once you select a West River board on that drop-down menu in the far right.
Part of the budget button, because on the big main screen, there's a budget button.
Yeah, and some districts have that and some districts don't.
Button that says budget.
Yeah, I know.
You're looking for budgets.
Well, and again, the other districts don't have a budget button, so we're trying to unify it as well.
By the way, the budget is not behind the budget button. You can spend an hour looking there.
The 2021's is there clearly though. I know. So we're trying to organize and try to figure out how to have that be front facing. But the budgets that were presented in December are on there. And I acknowledge that's not the easiest to get to. This is the system we inherited and we're trying to figure out how to make it better. So that's what I got on the website.
Meeting time. It's happening 7 o'clock.
You and I informal check it's 6 o'clock earlier. If not, we can.
Yes.
What day is it?
I have to transport a child, but can potentially work around it from a basketball game. We'll make it work. Yes,
Okay.
you too.
Yeah.
Does 6 work?
Oh, yeah, the 3 of us do, yeah.
Oh, yeah, all 3 of us.
All 3 of us do.
We have to start at 6:05. Does 6 work, everybody?
Yeah.
It's close.
Go first.
Tuesday, 28th.
Yeah, we go
It's
first.
Tuesday because River Valley. So
Yeah.
Can we do 6:30 and then we definitely won't be late?
On Wednesday.
Otherwise, there's a chance 3 of us show up a little late.
6:30.
Okay.
They made it.
Sorry, everybody.
So I have to present the final budget.
6:30.
Yep.
And we're going to have the budget review, the supers eval. Do you want to see a draft of articles? Because those will have to be warned also by that February date, or adopted on that February date so they can be warned in a timely way. So those will be articles for the meeting.
You won't be able to fill in.
No, that's what I'm saying. We want some of it, but if you have a draft, we can see which the budget one, not to plug in some numbers later and do that at the February meeting, but at least you have a draft, you can,
See what it's going to
we
look
can give
like.
feedback to Al and I around like that works, that doesn't work, whatever. So we'll try to have some articles. So we'll have budget article review, not approval necessarily, and the super eval.
Sounds good. All right. Entertain that final motion. Anything else, Corey?
When will you know what Jamaica says?
Like polls close at 7. She said she would send me an email, and she sent it to Al, me, and to Blanca, who's our district's clerk, and then I can forward it to the full board. So I mean, as long as it takes account.
Yeah, it won't take long. Won't take.
We're back on. It won't take long.
What percentage of the public do you think will vote, voting public?
Oh, there was more than that at the meeting.
Well, more than 5% of the voters.
Oh,
I don't
5%.
think so.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant 5 people.
Do you one of you want to share with the board what the petition is that they talked about at that meeting?
Yeah, I mean, Jamaica is circulating a petition currently requesting the district to create a committee to look at releasing Jamaica from the district, I guess. So if their petition was to find enough signatures, they would then ask us to create a committee to let Jamaica out so that
To look into the effects of letting Jamaica out.
And they described it as 5% of the voters, each of the member towns have to be on the petition in order to get the petition successful to bring to this.
they're actively rounding up signatures. We'll see how that goes.
7 is better, but 8 is bad.
Oh, okay.
Tuesday is bad.
All right. Sorry. When you and I looked at it, there's just board meetings
Board meetings
all
every
over
day.
the.
Yeah, we have, Monday night, we have one, and Wednesday night, we have one, so.
That's pretty much it. Yep. Okay. I'll entertain that final motion.
This time.
Yeah.
No, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wasn't going to take a chance you were going to ask another question.
No, I